The door opened 1 inch. That was enough. Kang Jae-won stopped mid-sentence in the hallway. He never stopped. He never lost a word. For 3 months, the Snow Wolf of the Kang Syndicate had ruled that Manhattan Mansion the way he ruled the docks. Cold voice, perfect posture, black 3-piece suit, white collar, thin black tie. A Korean dragon inked down the left side of his neck, tail curling into his collarbone. Nobody saw him hesitate. Nobody. Then he saw Amanda Stenberg. She stood on the tips of her bare feet, reaching for the top of the closet. Cream linen robe, loose knot at the waist, skin the color of honey, still warm from the shower. Curls damp on one shoulder, 25 years old, his maid for 92 days. In that house, he had never touched her. He had barely looked at her longer than 2 seconds at a time. He had counted every second. The robe shifted an inch. Jae-won took a step back. His hand closed into a fist against his own thigh. He knocked on the door twice, hard, a warning. "Miss Stenberg," he said, voice flat. "The library. In 1 hour." Downstairs, his uncle was already boarding a plane from Seoul. 2 Korean brides. 48 hours to choose. A family contract older than Jae-won's tattoo. Amanda closed the robe with both hands. She looked at the door for a long time. But what she was about to do in that library... Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Amanda poured the coffee before he asked. That was the rule she had built for herself in 91 mornings inside the Kang mansion, and she never broke it. The silver tray in her hands, the small porcelain cup, the 2 sugars on the saucer instead of in the coffee, because Kang Jae-won stirred them in himself and always counted the turns of the spoon. 7 turns. She had learned that on day 3. She had stopped watching him do it on day 9, because watching him do it meant standing there while his eyes traveled up her wrist and stopped somewhere near her elbow. Today he counted the 7 turns without looking at the cup. He looked at her hand on the tray. "Thank you, Miss Stenberg." His voice was low, controlled, the way he used it every morning, and Amanda answered the way she answered every morning. "Good morning, sir." She set the tray down on the corner of the desk. She stepped back exactly 1 pace. She kept her eyes on the polished floor between his shoes and hers. In 3 months, she had learned the geometry of this room like a nurse learns the geometry of a wound. 2 paces from the door, 3 paces from the desk. Never sit, never speak unless spoken to. Never let the coffee cool before she leaves. Jae-won did not lift the cup. He was writing something on a sheet of thick cream paper, a fountain pen moving in short, sharp strokes, and the tattoo on the left side of his neck slipped in and out of view every time his collar shifted. A Korean dragon in black ink, tail curled into his trapezius, head hidden behind his ear. She had learned that pattern too. She had learned how to look at it without looking at it. She turned to leave. "Miss Stenberg." She stopped. She did not turn around all the way. She turned her chin over her shoulder, the pearl earring her mother had left her, catching the light from the tall window. "Sir." He was still writing. "The delegation arrives Thursday. Prepare the East Wing." "Yes, sir." "Full linen, fresh flowers. The Ming vase in the entry hall stays out of sight." "Yes, sir." The pen paused. He looked up. His eyes were black and level, and read her like a page in a language nobody else in the mansion could speak. 2 seconds. 3. He looked back down at his letter. "That is all." Amanda walked out of the study and closed the door behind her without a sound. In the corridor, she pressed her spine against the cold walnut wall and breathed for the first time since she had walked in with the tray. 2 seconds. That was the length of it today. Yesterday it had been 3. The day before, 1. She was counting seconds now, the way a woman counts contractions, because she had begun to suspect that the seconds were building towards something. She was 25 years old. She had a 19-year-old sister named Naomi in a clinic in Baltimore. She had a uniform of black cotton and starched white cotton hanging in a servant's closet on the 3rd floor. She had a gold chain with a small crucifix under the apron, given to her at 15 by an aunt who was already dead. She had exactly $4,200 saved in an envelope inside a coat pocket in that same closet, and she had a rule, drilled into her by every housekeeper she had worked under since she was 17. You do not look at the man of the house. You do not let him look at you. If he begins to look, you leave. She had not left. She walked down the servants' stairs, holding the empty tray flat against her ribs. She counted the steps out loud in her head. 22 down to the ground floor. She had counted them the first week to keep herself from crying. She was still counting them. The kitchen at 9 in the morning smelled like scallions and clean steel. Mr. Brennan was already at the marble island in his black tailcoat, ironing the day's newspaper the way he ironed it every morning. And Song, the second cook, was cutting persimmons into thin, translucent moons for a fruit plate no one had ordered. "He take the coffee?" Mr. Brennan asked without looking up. He took it. "Read the paper?" He was writing. To whom? He didn't say. Mr. Brennan folded the ironed page. He was 60, and he had served 2 Kang men, the father and now the son, and there was nothing in this mansion he had not already seen twice. His mustache moved a quarter of an inch when he was thinking. "Miss Stenberg?" "Yes, sir." "The delegation is coming Thursday." "He told me." "He told you." Mr. Brennan's eyes came up. "Not me." Amanda set the empty tray on the marble. Song's knife paused for the length of 1 persimmon slice, then started again. "He asked for full linen," she said. "The East Wing." Mr. Brennan nodded. He looked at her a moment longer than he needed to. Then he opened the paper and began to iron the second page. "See to it," he said. Amanda went to the linen closet on the second floor. It was the size of a small chapel, and it smelled of cedar and starch. She counted sheets. She counted pillowcases. She counted the small, square face towels the Kang women preferred, folded into thirds instead of halves. When she counted, she did not think, and when she did not think, she did not have to hear the sound of her own breathing. She had come to this house through a woman named Mrs. Whitfield who ran a service in Manhattan that placed domestic staff into old money houses on the East Coast. Amanda had been washing floors at a boutique hotel in Midtown for 2 years before that. And before that, she had cleaned rooms in a hospital in Baltimore where her sister was already sick, and where Amanda had learned to iron a hospital bedsheet with mitered corners fast enough to keep her supervisor from writing her name on the discipline board. Mrs. Whitfield had told her, over a cup of tea in an office off Madison, that the Kang position paid 3 times what Amanda had ever earned and required exactly one thing in return. Invisibility, Mrs. Whitfield had said. "The Kangs pay for invisibility. Are you invisible, Miss Stenberg?" "Yes, ma'am." "Look at me when you answer." Amanda had looked up. Mrs. Whitfield had studied her face for a long time, the oval line of her jaw, the mouth that stayed closed even when it wanted to open, the dark eyes with their almond corners, the hair coiled and pinned tight against her scalp, because she had come to the interview with her hair braided and pinned, because that was what you did. "You are not invisible," Mrs. Whitfield had said finally, "but you know how to be silent. That will have to do." Amanda had taken the position 2 days later. Naomi's treatment had started the following Monday. Now, in the linen closet with a stack of white pillowcases pressed against her collarbone, Amanda thought of her sister. She thought of the small metal bed in the clinic in Baltimore where Naomi slept with her mouth slightly open and one hand curled under her cheek. She thought of the doctor who had said, 6 weeks ago, that they would know more after the next round of tests. She thought of the envelope in the coat pocket upstairs. $4,200. Not enough. Not close. She closed the closet door. She carried the linens down the corridor toward the East Wing. Halfway there, she heard the soft chime of a phone. Not hers. She did not own a phone that chimed. The chime was coming from the small alcove where Mr. Brennan kept the house line, and the line only rang when the call came from a Kang number that had cleared 3 layers of security. She kept walking. Behind her, she heard Mr. Brennan's voice, level, deferential, low. She heard him say, "Yes, uncle." She heard him say, "Yes, Thursday." She heard the silence between phrases where the uncle was speaking. She heard him say, at the end, "I will inform him at once." Amanda's steps slowed by half without her permission. She turned the corner into the East Wing and did not look back. The East Wing had 6 guest suites and one long gallery lined with black and white photographs of Kang ancestors in high collars and severe expressions. She began at the far end. She stripped the bed. She refolded the corners. She hung the fresh linens. She dusted the mantel with a cloth folded over 3 fingers. In every room, she did the same set of movements, the same count of minutes, and in every room, she felt the seconds she had been counting begin to press against the inside of her chest. 3 months, 91 mornings, 2 seconds today, 3 yesterday, 1 the day before, and the way he had looked at her hand when he had said her name. She was not stupid. She knew what she was seeing. She had known what she was seeing since the second week. She had told herself that a man like Kang Jae-won did not look at women like Amanda Stenberg, and even if he did it for one reason and one reason only, and Amanda Stenberg was not that reason. She had told herself she was reading her own hunger into his silence. She had told herself that her mother's voice in her head, the voice that said, "Get out of that house," was the voice of a woman who did not understand what $4,200 meant to a 19-year-old sister with tubes in her arms. She had stayed. She had stayed and she had counted. At 10, she took a short break at the window at the end of the gallery. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass. Outside, the gravel drive curved between 2 rows of clipped hedges, and beyond the hedges, the winter lawn stretched toward the gate. A black sedan sat parked near the guardhouse. 2 men stood beside it. One of them was smoking. The other was looking up at the mansion. He was looking at her window. Amanda stepped back from the glass. She went to the 6th suite. She stripped the bed. She refolded the corners. Her hands moved without her. She thought of a Thursday 4 years ago, when Naomi had first collapsed on the sidewalk outside their apartment building in Baltimore. She thought of a man in a linen suit at the boutique hotel who had once put a $100 bill on her cleaning cart and had asked her, in a voice like syrup, how much a girl like her cost for an evening. She had put the bill on the corner of the bed, and she had walked out of the room, and she had gone straight to Mrs. Whitfield the next morning. Invisibility. The Kangs paid for invisibility. By 11, she had finished the 4th suite, and she stood in the gallery pressing the small of her back with the flat of her hand. Above her, the first Kang patriarch stared down out of a silver frame. He had the same jaw as Jae-won, the same mouth. He had not been a kind man. Nobody who lived in this mansion pretended he had been. Footsteps behind her. Mr. Brennan. Miss Stenberg. Sir. A delegation from Seoul. Landing Thursday. The uncle is coming. Amanda folded the cloth into a smaller square. How many rooms? She said. 4 principal guests. 9 attendants and security. Prepare all 6 suites. Prepare the guest cottage as well. Yes, sir. He did not leave. He stood in the gallery with his hands clasped behind his back and looked at the wall of Kang men, and he spoke to Amanda without turning his head. The uncle, Mr. Brennan said. He is bringing 2 women with him. Amanda unfolded the cloth. She folded it again. Family? Cousins. Ah, marriageable cousins. She kept her face flat. She had trained it flat for years, and it obeyed her. I understand, sir. Mr. Brennan turned his head an inch. His eyes were on her now. Miss Stenberg. Sir, do you understand? She did not answer at first. She looked at the folded cloth in her hand, as if it were a page of scripture she was reading for the first time. I understand, sir. Mr. Brennan nodded once. He walked back down the corridor toward the kitchen. His footsteps grew smaller. The gallery grew quiet. Amanda stood in the quiet, and she felt something inside her chest that she had trained to be flat begin to lift. She did not name it. She was not going to name it. She went to the 5th suite, and she began again. By noon, she had finished the east wing. She went back down to the kitchen and ate a small plate of rice and cold beef that Song had left for her on the servant's side of the marble island. She did not taste it. She washed the plate. She washed the fork. She dried both and put them back exactly where she had found them. At 1, she went upstairs to change the flowers in the main hall. At 2, she went to the study to collect the coffee cup. He was not in the study. The cup was empty except for a thin brown ring at the bottom. And beside the cup, folded once, was the cream sheet of paper he had been writing on that morning. It was folded so that only the back of the paper faced up. She did not touch it. She lifted the cup, the saucer, the small silver spoon. She left the paper where it was. At the door she paused. She did not know why. She turned her head halfway and looked at the folded sheet on the desk. She left the study. She closed the door. At 3, she carried a tray of fresh tea to the drawing room where Jae-won was meeting with a man in a gray suit she had never seen before. She set the tray down. She stepped back 1 pace. She kept her eyes on the floor. The man in the gray suit was speaking Korean, low and fast, and Jae-won was answering him in single syllables. She caught nothing. She was not supposed to catch anything. She turned to leave. Miss Stenberg. She stopped. Sir, close the west drawing room after 7 tonight. Full staff dismissed by 8. Amanda's fingers on the tray went very still. The full staff was never dismissed by 8. The full staff worked until 11. The full staff was dismissed early, only on the nights when J1 did not want witnesses in the mansion, and in 3 months, Amanda had seen the full staff dismissed early, exactly twice. Both of them on nights when a car with tinted glass had rolled up the drive at 10, and men in dark coats had walked into the study and walked out again at 3 in the morning. Yes, sir. You included, Miss Stenberg. Her chin lifted a fraction of an inch before she caught it. Yes, sir. That is all. She walked out. She closed the door. In the corridor, she pressed her palm against her sternum and held it there. Down in the kitchen, Mr. Brennan was polishing a set of silver knives, and he did not look up when she came in. He dismissed the staff at 8, Amanda said. I heard. He dismissed me. Mr. Brennan set down the knife he was polishing. He looked at her. He has never dismissed you before, he said. No, sir. Not once in 91 days. Amanda said nothing. Mr. Brennan picked up the knife again. His mustache moved a quarter of an inch. Go upstairs early, Miss Stenberg, he said. Take a long bath. Lock your door. She looked at him. Sir. Lock your door, Miss Stenberg. She went upstairs at 7:40. The servants' quarters were on the 3rd floor at the back of the mansion, a long hallway of small rooms with iron latches and single windows. Her room was the 3rd on the left. She had a bed. She had a small desk. She had a wooden chair. She had a wardrobe with 2 doors and a top shelf she could not reach without standing on the chair. She had a bathroom she shared with 2 other rooms that were currently empty because the 2 other maids had been let go the week Amanda had arrived and had not been replaced. She heard Mr. Brennan's voice downstairs calling the staff. She heard doors opening and closing. She heard cars starting on the gravel outside. By 8, the mansion was quieter than it had been in 3 months. She ran the water in her tub. She sat on the edge of the tub and unfastened the small crucifix from around her neck and laid it on the porcelain lip. She got out of her uniform. She folded the black dress and set it on the wooden chair. She folded the apron on top of it. She got into the water. She was tired. She was tired all the way to the bones of her feet. The water was hot. She closed her eyes. Downstairs, on the ground floor, 3 men in dark coats had walked into Kang Jae-won's study at 7:45 and had walked out again at 8:30. Kang Jae-won had stood at his window and watched their car pull away and had not turned around when Mr. Brennan came in to ask if he needed anything else for the night. No. Very good, sir. Brennan. Sir. Is she upstairs? Mr. Brennan did not answer for a long time. Sir. Is Miss Stenberg upstairs? Yes, sir. Thank you, Brennan. You may retire. Mr. Brennan retired. Jae-won stood at the window a while longer. Then he turned, and he crossed the study, and he opened the door, and he walked into the corridor. He did not take the main stairs. He took the servants' stairs at the back of the mansion, 1 flight, 2 flights, 3 flights, and at the top of the 3rd flight he stopped in the small landing, and he did not move for a full minute. He was 37 years old. He had been the head of the Kang family in America since he was 31. He had killed a man at 24, and he had never spoken of it, and he did not think of it now. He was thinking of a black woman's hand pouring coffee. He was thinking of the pearl in her ear and the way her chin had turned over her shoulder that morning when he had called her name. He was thinking of 91 mornings. He walked down the corridor. Upstairs, Amanda had climbed out of the tub. She had wrapped a linen bathrobe around herself and tied it at the waist with a loose knot. Her hair was wet at the ends and it hung over one shoulder in coils that dripped water down the front of the robe. She was barefoot. She was standing on the tips of her toes, reaching up toward the top shelf of the wardrobe where she kept a clean folded uniform for the next morning. The wooden chair was on the other side of the room. She had not bothered to drag it over. She was tall enough, almost. Her fingertips brushed the folded black cotton on the shelf. She stretched. The bathrobe rode up along the back of her calves. 3 doors down, Kang Jae-won stopped in front of her door. He raised his hand to knock. He said her name once, low, more to himself than to her. Miss Stenberg. The door was not fully closed. The knuckle of his hand touched the door, and the door swung inward an inch. 2 inches. 4. A hinge whispered. He froze. He was mid-word. He had begun to say her name a second time, louder, the way a man knocks on a servant's door in his own house, and the word had already left his teeth and had not left his mouth when the door opened on Amanda Stenberg standing on the tips of her toes in a linen bathrobe, one long dark arm stretched up toward a wardrobe shelf, her wet hair falling across her collarbone in slow black coils, her spine a long curved line under the robe, her bare heel lifted off the floor. The sound in his mouth stopped. He did not move. She did not know he was there. She had not heard the door. She stretched an inch further, and her fingers closed around the folded cotton, and she began to lower herself back down onto her heels. Jaewon took a step back. He took a second step back. He raised his hand and he brought his knuckle down against the door with force. One hard, sharp knock that split the silence in the corridor, and the door swung inward the rest of the way as it hit its own frame, and Amanda spun with the folded uniform pressed to her chest, and her eyes went past him for one long second before they found his face. She did not scream. She did not cover her mouth. She held the folded uniform against her collarbone, and she looked at him. He looked at her. Neither of them spoke. The moment was 2 seconds long, then 3, then 4. Jaewon took a third step back. His hand went to the doorframe beside him and gripped it once and let it go. Miss Stenberg. His voice was not the voice he had used at breakfast. It was lower. It was pulled tight. Sir? The library. 9 minutes. Sir? 9 minutes, Miss Stenberg. He turned and he walked down the corridor, and he took the servants' stairs down at a pace that was not quite a walk, and not yet a run, and he did not stop at the second floor or the first, and by the time he reached the study, he had already loosened his collar, and set his hand flat on the desk, and closed his eyes, and inside his chest, the last word he had spoken to himself before he had raised his hand to knock on that door, was still repeating, and it would not stop. I cannot pretend anymore. Upstairs, Amanda closed her door. She turned the iron latch. She leaned her back against the wood, and she slid down the wood until she was sitting on the floor of her own room, with the folded uniform still pressed against her collarbone, and her wet hair dripping onto her knees. She looked up at the small crucifix on the porcelain lip of the tub across the room, and her mouth moved without sound around 3 words. God help me. 9 minutes. She had 9 minutes. Down in the study, Kang Jae-won opened his eyes. He looked at the folded cream letter on the desk. He looked at the wall of books behind him. He looked at his own hand on the polished wood, and he saw that it was not steady. He walked out of the study. He walked toward the library. The library sat at the west end of the second floor. 2 heavy doors of dark walnut, a long window that opened onto the garden, shelves that climbed to the ceiling on 3 walls, packed with books in Korean, English, French, and old leather-bound legal codes his grandfather had brought from Seoul in a wooden crate almost 50 years ago. A fireplace that was cold now, in the middle of the afternoon, a single reading lamp burning on the desk. The rest of the room lived in that soft gray light that comes through tall curtains when the sun is already low. Kang Jae-won walked in first. He did not sit. He stood at the window with his back to the door and looked at the garden and did not see any of it. His hands were in the pockets of his black 3-piece suit. He had put the tie back on. He had buttoned the collar. He had made himself, again, into the man the house was used to seeing. He heard her steps in the corridor. Slow, measured, not scared. That surprised him. He had expected fear. He had told himself, on the way down from the servant's stair, that he would give her a full minute to breathe before he opened his mouth. He had rehearsed the first sentence 4 times. He had rejected all 4. Amanda Stenberg knocked once. 2 knuckles. Light, but not timid. Come in, he said. His voice sounded normal. He was grateful for that. She opened the door. She closed it behind her without letting it slam. She had put the uniform back on. Black dress, white apron, white collar and cuffs, black stockings, low black shoes. The hair was still slightly damp at the ends, and she had gathered the volume of curls to one side, over the right shoulder, the way she always wore it. The small gold chain with the crucifix was tucked, again, under the apron. She looked exactly like the woman who had been serving him coffee for 3 months, which was, he understood in that second, the point. She stopped 2 steps inside the door. Not close, not far, hands folded in front of the apron, chin level, eyes on him. He turned from the window. Miss Stenberg, he said. Thank you for coming. Sir. He gestured to one of the two armchairs by the cold fireplace. Please, sit. I'd rather stand, sir, if you'll allow me. He allowed her. He did not sit either. He walked to the desk. He rested one hand on the leather blotter. He looked at his own hand for a second, at the old family ring on the right little finger, and then he looked up. There will be a delegation in this house in less than 48 hours, he said. You already know that. Beatrice will have told the staff by now. Yes, sir. She told us at lunch. What she did not tell you, he said, is what the delegation is for. Amanda waited. My uncle is coming to introduce two candidates. Both of them are my cousins on my father's side. Both of them have been raised, since they were children, to be considered as future partners for the head of the family. The head of the family at this moment is me. He said it the way a man reads a clause in a contract. Flat, complete, no adjectives. He watched her face while he said it. He was looking for something specific. He was looking for the flinch, the small crack around the mouth, the eye that drops for a half second, the thing that would tell him she had already imagined this and had already survived the imagining of it, alone, in that small room at the end of the servants' corridor. He did not find it. She held. She held so still it was almost cruel. I understand, sir. I don't think you do, he said. Not yet. He came around the desk. He stopped at a respectful distance. Not the distance of a boss, the distance of a man who has decided, in the last 20 minutes, that he will not use his size or his height or his voice against her, ever, for the rest of this conversation, for the rest of his life. Miss Stenberg, he said, in 1 hour I will be signing a compensation package, 6 months of full salary, a written letter of recommendation on Kang family letterhead. Placement, if you wish it, at any one of 3 residences I trust in Manhattan, in Boston, or in Washington. Better houses than this one, kinder houses than this one. Houses where the master does not stand in the corridor of the servants' floor and lose his mind because a door opened 3 inches. He said the last sentence and he did not look away. He watched himself say it. He watched her hear it. He watched the small muscle at the corner of her jaw move once and then be still. You are offering me severance, sir. I am offering you a way out. With dignity. With everything I am able to give you. That is not the thing I am not allowed to give you. The room was quiet. The reading lamp buzzed very faintly. Outside, a gardener was raking gravel on the far path. The sound came through the window like something from another country. Amanda took a breath. He heard it. It was the first breath in the conversation that was not perfectly controlled. May I speak plainly, sir? Please. You saw what you should not have seen, she said. This afternoon. Upstairs. Yes. And I felt what I should not have felt. Standing on the tiles. With that door open 3 inches. Before I even understood you were there. He did not answer. He did not trust his voice for that one. We can pretend, she said, that this conversation ended at the compensation package, sir, if that is what you want. I will take the letter. I will take the salary. I will go to Boston. I will never write. I will never call. Your uncle will arrive on Friday, and he will meet your cousins, and he will find you exactly as he expects to find you. Nobody in this house will ever say the name Amanda Stenberg out loud again. She paused. I can do that for you, sir. If you tell me to do that, I will do it before dinner. He looked at her. He looked at the small gold chain under the apron, the way it lifted 1/4 of an inch each time she breathed. He looked at the hand that had poured his coffee, every morning, for 3 months, at 7:15, without ever spilling. He looked at the mouth that had just, very calmly, offered to erase itself out of his life so that he would not have to explain her to a 72-year-old man with a jade cane. He opened his mouth. He was going to say it. He had rehearsed it in the corridor upstairs, with his forehead against the wall, and he had rehearsed it again on the stairs, and he had rehearsed it a 3rd time at the window before she walked in. 3 words. He had them ready. He had them at the back of his teeth. He did not say them. Something in his chest closed. The old thing. The thing that had been trained into him at 6 years old, at 9, at 15, at 22, in a room in Seoul, with his grandfather sitting across a low table, and later, in a room in Manhattan, with his uncle sitting across a bigger one. The thing that said, first the family, then the name, then the men who follow you, then the woman. Always in that order. Never a different order. A Kang who reverses the order is a Kang who has already lost the house. The 3 words stayed at the back of his teeth. They did not come out. What came out was this. Miss Stenberg, I am not in a position today to tell you what you deserve to hear. Her eyes did not move, but something behind them did. I understand, sir. I am asking you, he said, and now his voice was lower and slower, and he hated himself for how careful it was. To give me 48 hours, not more, not less. Stay in the house, wear the uniform, serve the coffee, meet the delegation. Do not answer any question that is asked of you by anyone whose last name is Kang. If anyone speaks to you in a way that is not correct, you look at me and I will handle it in the room. 48 hours. And after 48 hours, sir. After 48 hours, he said, I will be able to tell you the thing I was not able to tell you today. In this room, in front of that fireplace, with my mouth. Not through a letter, not through Beatrice, not through a lawyer. With my mouth. To your face. She was silent for what felt like a long time. It was probably 4 seconds. And if what you tell me, sir, in 48 hours, is the compensation package, then the compensation package will already have been doubled, he said, and you will be free to spit in my face before you sign it. I will not stop you. Nobody in this house will stop you. That is my word. She almost smiled. It did not reach her mouth. It reached, for a fraction of a second, one corner of her eye, and then it was gone. That is a very expensive word, sir. It is the only kind I know how to give. She looked down, not at the floor, at her own hands, folded in front of the apron. She was still, again, for a long moment. He did not fill the silence. He had learned, from his grandfather, that a man who fills the silence in a room like this is a man who is negotiating against himself. When she spoke again, her voice was different, not softer, steadier. Sir, you are asking me to stand in that dining room on Friday night and pour wine for a woman who is being presented to you as a wife and pretend that I am the same woman I was on Monday. Yes. You are asking me to do that in a black dress with a white apron, in front of your uncle, in front of 2 women who will look at me the way women of that house look at women of my house, and not let anything cross my face. Yes. You are asking me for 48 hours of a kind of silence, sir, that most people would not survive for one. I am. And you know, sir, that if you cannot give me the answer at the end of it, you will have broken something in me that severance does not repair. He did not look away. I know. She took one long breath. She lifted her chin, the last quarter of an inch it could still lift. The gold chain moved under the apron. Then I will give you the 48 hours, sir. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, sir. Thank me on Sunday, if there is anything left to thank. She turned. She walked toward the door with the same measured step she had walked in with. Her hand touched the knob. She stopped. She did not look back over her shoulder. She spoke to the wood of the door. Mr. Kang. Yes. The thing you almost said, sir, just now, at the desk, before you closed your mouth. Yes. Whatever it was, she said. Do not say it to me in 48 hours if you cannot also say it to your uncle in the same room. Then she opened the door and she walked out and she closed it behind her without letting it slam. Jaewon stood in the middle of the library for a long time. He did not move. He looked at the cold fireplace. He looked at the 2 empty armchairs. He looked at the desk where his hand had rested. He looked at the door. He thought about the small muscle in her jaw. He thought about the quarter-inch of gold chain that had lifted and fallen under the apron each time she breathed. He thought about the last sentence she had said, at the door, without turning around. He walked to the desk. He picked up the internal telephone. He pressed the extension for the head of the household staff. Beatrice. Sir. Cancel the compensation package. There was a very small pause on the other end. Which package, sir? You know which one. Yes, sir. Do not file it. Do not shred it either. Put it in the second drawer of my desk, the one that locks. Bring me the key. Yes, sir. And Beatrice. Sir, for the next 48 hours, Miss Stenberg is to receive no additional duties, no supplementary tasks, no requests from members of the delegation. If my uncle asks her a question, you interrupt. If either of my cousins asks her a question, you interrupt. If any of the lawyers ask her a question, You interrupt. You address any objection to me directly. Another small pause. Sir, may I ask in confidence whether Miss Stenberg is at risk in this house? He looked at the door. No, Beatrice, she is not at risk in this house. She is under my protection in this house. That is a different sentence. Yes, sir, I understand the difference. Thank you. He put the phone down. He walked to the window. He put his hands back in his pockets. He looked at the garden. This time he saw it. The gravel path, the trimmed boxwood, the small stone bench near the koi pond where nobody ever sat. The old cherry tree that his grandmother had planted the year the house was bought, that he had almost had cut down twice, and that he had, both times, at the last minute, told the gardener to leave alone. Downstairs, in her small room at the end of the servants' corridor, Amanda Stenberg was sitting on the edge of the narrow bed. She had not taken off the apron. She had not taken off the shoes. Her hands were folded in her lap, exactly the way they had been folded in the library, in front of him, 5 minutes ago. The window was open 1 inch. The curtain moved a little. On the wall above the small dresser, a printed photograph of a girl in a hospital gown was pinned with 2 thumbtacks. The girl was smiling. The girl was thin. The girl had the same shape of eye as Amanda and the same tone of skin, only lighter, and the same soft cheekbone, and hair cut short at the shoulder in natural curls. Amanda looked at the photograph. She spoke to it very quietly. In English, because that was the language they had grown up speaking to each other, not to the room, not to God, to her sister. 2 more days, baby, she said. 2 more days and I will know, and then whatever the answer is, I promise you, we will still eat on Sunday. She held her own hands tighter. She did not cry. She had decided, in the library, standing in front of him with the gold chain rising and falling under the apron, that she would not cry until Sunday. She had made herself a small, private contract about it. She intended to honor it. Downstairs, in the kitchen, Beatrice was already walking through the pantry with a printed sheet of paper in her hand and a pencil behind her ear. She was rearranging the duty roster for the next 48 hours. She was moving Amanda off the wine service for Friday night. She was moving Amanda off the coat check at the entrance. She was moving Amanda off any duty that would require her to be within 3 meters of the delegation for more than the time it took to carry a coffee tray from the sideboard to a table. She did all of it with her mouth in a straight line and her eyes very calm. She had been the head of household in this house for 21 years. She had never, in 21 years, received a phone call quite like the one she had just received. She did not need it explained. In the study, at the other end of the second floor, Jaewon opened his laptop. He wrote 3 emails. The first was to his personal lawyer in Manhattan. The second was to a private investigator in Seoul, an old contact who had done discreet work for his father 12 years earlier. The third was to himself, saved as a draft, not sent. That third one was 7 lines long. It began with the words, "If, on Sunday, I am still the man who could not say it in the library." He read it twice. He did not correct it. He closed the laptop. Outside, the sun dropped 1 more notch. The house began to prepare, quietly, for the dinner that would not be the dinner. The one that was still 48 hours away. The one where a 72-year-old man with a jade cane would walk in through the front door with 2 women in pastel hanbok on his arm and expect to leave 3 days later, with the future of the American branch of the family decided. Beatrice passed the door of the library. She did not look in. She heard, through the wood, the small sound of a man walking, slowly, from the window to the desk and back to the window again, over and over, in a rectangle. She did not stop. She continued down the corridor with the paper in her hand. The rectangle in the library went on for another 20 minutes. Then it stopped. Then the doors opened. Then Kang Jae-won walked out into the corridor, with his tie straight and his collar closed and his face arranged, again, into the face the house was used to seeing. He walked past Beatrice at the top of the stairs. He nodded once, she nodded once. Nothing was said, nothing needed to be. He went down the main stair. He crossed the marble entrance. He walked out through the tall front doors into the driveway. His driver was already standing beside the black sedan. He got into the back seat. He did not say where they were going. The driver, who had driven him for 11 years, did not ask. He drove. At the end of the long gravel drive, the car turned left, toward the city. Behind them, the house sat under a sky that was beginning to turn a very slow shade of orange over the top of the old cherry tree. In a small room at the end of a small corridor on the top floor, a young black woman in a black dress and a white apron sat on the edge of a narrow bed and looked at a photograph of her sister and counted 48 hours in her head, in units of 6, the way her mother had taught her to count long shifts when she was 15. 8 sets of 6. 8 small mountains. She would climb them one at a time. Downstairs, in the kitchen, Beatrice put the printed sheet of paper down on the wooden counter, took the pencil from behind her ear, and drew, at the bottom of it, a single small check mark. Then she folded the sheet in half and in half again and put it in the pocket of her apron. Then she went to check the wine cellar for Friday night. Because a house does not stop being a house because a man in a black suit almost said something in a library. A house keeps going. A house always keeps going. The car reached the top of the hill. The gates opened. The gates closed. The sound of gravel became the sound of asphalt. The sedan turned into the main road and disappeared behind the tall hedge. And in the library that he had just left, on the leather blotter of the desk, in the exact spot where his hand had rested while he was speaking to her, there was a single small mark, a crescent, the kind of mark a fingernail leaves in leather when a man is pressing down harder than he thinks he is. Beatrice, when she came in later that night to draw the curtains, would see it. She would run her thumb across it once. She would not try to smooth it out. She would leave it. Some marks in a house are meant to stay. She drew the curtains. She turned off the reading lamp. She closed the doors of the library behind her. She walked down the corridor toward the servants' stair. On the way, she paused for exactly 1 second at the door of the small room at the end. She did not knock. She did not speak. She only pressed her palm, very briefly, against the wood, at the height of a shoulder. Then she took her hand away and continued down the stair. Inside the room, Amanda did not hear the palm on the door, but something in the air of the house shifted a quarter of an inch. The way it shifts when a person who has worked in a place for 21 years silently decides which side she is on. Amanda felt it without knowing what it was. She lifted her head from her hands. She looked at the photograph on the wall. She almost smiled. 2 more days. The 48 hours narrowed into a single morning. The mansion woke earlier than usual. The gardeners were told to trim the boxwood along the east drive by 6. The window washers arrived at 7. The florist came at 8 with white orchids in crates, and the head housekeeper walked behind her counting stems out loud. Amanda watched from the second-floor landing with a stack of folded linens in her arms. She had not slept. She had lain in her bed until 4, then dressed, then stood at her window watching the sky turn from black to a low gray blue over the trees. She had not cried again. She had done something harder. She had decided to be useful. She went down to the kitchen at 7. She poured her coffee. She drank it standing. The cook looked at her once and did not speak. The staff had noticed something without knowing what. There was a new quiet in the house, the kind of quiet that comes before a room fills with people who do not like each other. At 9, the head of security came through the service hall with a tablet in his hand and gave the day's schedule to the staff in short, clean sentences. Delegation arrives at 11:15. Lunch informal at 1. Tour of the property at 3. Formal dinner at 7:30 in the main dining room. Table set for 9. Wine service by the head steward. Kitchen closes to outside deliveries after 4. All windows on the east wing locked and monitored. All phones surrendered at the front door except the master's and the elders. He read it twice. He looked up and nodded and left. Amanda listened from the pantry. She heard her name once. Miss Stenberg on floor service. That was all. She let out a breath she had not known she was holding. She was not to serve the dinner. She was to keep the corridors clean and the guest rooms fresh and the west sitting room ready for the elders' afternoon tea. She was to be seen and not present. She understood the meaning of it. He had done what he could. At 11:12, 3 black cars turned into the drive. Amanda was on the second floor with a cart of fresh towels when she heard the tires on the gravel. She did not go to the window. She kept folding. She heard the front doors open below. She heard the head butler's voice, warm and old and precise, greeting a man in Korean. She heard a woman's laugh, light and short, the kind of laugh that is a signal and not a feeling. She heard shoes on the marble. She heard the low murmur of a household arranging itself around new weight. She finished the towels. She wheeled the cart to the linen closet. She closed the door quietly. She stood there for a moment with her hand on the wood. 2 more days. She went down the service stairs to the lower corridor and slipped through to the west sitting room. She checked the tea service. She checked the light. She adjusted a curtain by an inch. She set out the small dish of dried persimmon the elder was said to prefer. She left before anyone came in. She passed the main entrance hall on her way to the linen room. She did not mean to look. She looked. The elder was standing in the center of the marble floor with his hand resting on the head of a dark wooden cane. He was smaller than she had expected, and more still. His hair was cut close and pushed back, the gray of old iron. His hanbok was black with a thin band of dark blue at the collar. His face was carved into long vertical lines by decades of a mouth that did not smile. His eyes moved over the hall the way a surveyor's eyes move over land. He was not impressed. He was measuring. Behind him, 2 women. The first was tall and slender, and dressed in a pale pink hanbok with silver embroidery at the sleeves. Her black hair fell straight and shining to her collarbones, with a side fringe brushed to a perfect line. Her lips were painted a soft rose. She was smiling. She was smiling at the butler, at the ceiling, at the flowers on the console, at everything and nothing, and the smile did not reach her eyes. That would be Ji-eun. Amanda knew before anyone said her name. The second woman was shorter. Her hair was pulled back into a low knot with a side fringe of the same discipline. She wore a hanbok in the color of pale bone with a thin gold chain at her throat and small gold-rimmed glasses. Her mouth was neutral. She did not look at the flowers. She looked at the room. She looked at the staff. She looked at the way the light fell. She catalogued. That would be So-yeon. Behind the 2 women, 3 men in dark suits with the kind of watches that were only worn to be recognized by other men with the same watches. Lawyers. One with a leather portfolio, one with a phone he was pretending not to check, one who stood a half step back with the flat expression of a man who was paid to remember what everyone said. Jaewon stood at the foot of the main staircase. Amanda saw him and looked away and kept walking. She did not stop. Her heels were quiet on the wood of the side corridor. She had trained herself, over the years, to move through rooms without pulling the eye. She used the training now. She did not turn her head. She did not slow. She reached the door to the linen room and pushed it open, and stepped inside, and closed it behind her, and stood with her back against it and breathed. She had seen his face for half a second. It was the face he wore for business, smooth, blank, the mouth set to a line that could be read as respectful welcome by anyone who did not know him. She knew him now. She saw the tension in the shoulder. She saw the way his weight was distributed on his back foot. He was braced. She pressed her palms flat against the door behind her. 2 more days. The lunch was informal, which meant it lasted 2 hours, and was served on the veranda under the shade of the pergola in 3 courses that had been chosen a week in advance. Amanda did not serve. She stood inside the doorway of the small pantry off the veranda, in case the head steward needed a hand with the tray, and she saw everything through the crack of the swinging door. The elder ate slowly. He tasted the soup and put the spoon down. He said something in Korean to the butler, which the butler translated as a compliment about the broth, but the elder's expression had not been a compliment. The butler was diplomatic. The butler was old and had lived in this house for 30 years and knew how to make a man's contempt sound like praise in another language. Ji-eun sat at Jaewon's right. She did not need to be seated there. There was no place card. She had chosen the seat with the ease of a woman who had been told all her life that she would be seated wherever she liked. She leaned toward Jaewon when she spoke. She laughed at things that had not been said as jokes. She touched the base of her wineglass with her fingertip in small, precise circles. Jaewon answered her in short, polite sentences. He did not lean back. He did not lean toward her. He held his posture at a mathematical distance and drank his water and cut his food with the same economy he used in his office. Amanda watched his jaw. Once, when Ji-eun laughed and put her hand on the tablecloth 2 inches from his wrist, Amanda saw the muscle at the corner of his mouth tighten by a millimeter and release. He did not move his hand. He did not need to. His hand was already where it had been. So-yeon spoke less. She asked one question about the architecture of the house. She asked another about the elder's flight. She ate her food. She watched the veranda the way she had watched the hall. She watched Amanda for 1 second when Amanda had to step out to bring a fresh pitcher of water to the head steward, and Amanda felt the look and did not return it, and kept moving and set the pitcher down and walked back to the pantry. So-yeon had not smiled. She had not frowned. She had simply seen. The elder made a remark in Korean toward the end of the meal that made one of the lawyers cough into his napkin. Jaewon answered him in Korean. 1 sentence, Low, flat, final. The elder looked at him for a long moment, then he lifted his teacup and drank. The subject, whatever it had been, was closed for the length of the lunch. Amanda did not understand a word of the Korean. She did not need to. She had heard the shape of the sentence. She had heard her master's voice say something that could be read as, "Here we do not discuss this at the table," and she had heard the elder's silence read as, "We will discuss it elsewhere then." 2 more days. She let the words become a rhythm inside her ribs. She went back to the linen room. The afternoon tour of the property took 2 hours. Amanda used the time to change every arrangement of flowers on the ground floor and to walk the guest rooms one last time. She checked the water carafes. She checked the folded corners of the top sheets. She checked the small tray of tea in the elder's room and replaced a cup that had a hairline she had missed the day before. She left a fresh orchid on Ji-eun's writing desk because the head housekeeper had asked her to. She did not linger in that room. Something about it already smelled of a perfume she did not want on her clothes. She was carrying the old cup down the service stairs when she nearly ran into him. He was on the landing between floors. He had come up the service stairs, not the main. He was in his dark 3-piece suit with the tie perfectly knotted and the pocket square just showing, and he stopped 1 step below her, and she stopped 1 step above him, and they were exactly at eye level. There was no one else on the stairs. He looked at her. She looked at him. He did not speak. She did not speak. His breath was even, but not easy. She could see the small vein at his temple. She could see the fine gold chain of the watch at his wrist, half hidden under the cuff. She could smell his soap and the faintest edge of tobacco that had not been on him at breakfast. He had smoked. Once. Somewhere out of sight of the elder. He shifted his weight. He looked down at the cup in her hand. He looked back at her face. 2 more days, he said, quietly, in English, as if to no one. Amanda's throat closed. She nodded once. She did not trust her voice. He moved past her. His sleeve did not brush hers. He was careful. He climbed the stairs without looking back, and she stood on the landing with a chipped teacup in her hand, and heard the door at the top open and close, and she went down. The formal dinner was called for 7:30. By 7, the house had become something else. The main dining room had been opened. It was a room Amanda had cleaned twice a week for 3 months and had never seen used. The chandelier was lit for the first time in her memory, and the crystals threw small trembling lights across the ceiling, in a way that made the walls seem to move. The table was set for 9. 9 white plates on 9 white chargers. 9 crystal glasses in 3 sizes at each place. 9 napkins folded into narrow towers. 9 name cards written in a hand so careful it looked printed. Amanda was not in the dining room. She was in the corridor outside it with a small silver tray at her hip, in case a guest asked for something in passing. She had been placed there by the head housekeeper without discussion. She understood. It was the compromise between invisibility and duty. She would be near enough to be useful. She would not be at the table. The guests came down at 7:28. The elder first, on the arm of his oldest lawyer, cane in his other hand. He had changed into a black hanbok with a subtle pattern of cranes at the hem. Ji-eun behind him in a hanbok the color of cream with pale gold embroidery, hair swept to one side and pinned with a small ornament of pearl and jade. So-yeon last, in soft gray, glasses on, hands clasped low in front of her. Jaewon came from the other end of the corridor. He had changed. He wore black. The suit was cut closer than the day suit. The tie was black on black. The shirt was white and starched. He walked slowly. He greeted the elder with a small bow that was correct to the last degree. He offered Ji-eun the polite nod of a host. He offered So-yeon the same nod. He did not look at Amanda. She was not offended. She understood. The party went into the dining room. The doors were closed. Amanda took her place 3 steps down the corridor by the small console with the tray. She could hear voices through the door in that low, muffled way that turns speech into music. She could not make out words. She did not want to. The dinner lasted an hour and 40 minutes. Twice, a steward slipped out with an empty tray and passed her without a word. Once, the butler came out to fetch a bottle from the cellar and paused in front of her and said, in a very quiet voice, "You are doing well, Miss Stenberg." He said it in the tone he used when he wanted her to know that he had seen her and that he approved. She thanked him with her eyes. He walked on. At 9:10, the door to the dining room opened. Jaewon came out first. He was speaking over his shoulder in Korean to the elder, and his voice had the polite, formal cadence of a host offering brandy in the library. He walked past Amanda without turning his head, and Ji-eun came out just behind him. Ji-eun stopped. She stopped exactly at the point in the corridor where Amanda was standing. She turned her head very slowly, the way a cat turns its head when it has decided to notice something. She looked at Amanda for a beat too long, then she smiled. The smile did not reach her eyes. "Oh," she said. Her English was perfect and lightly accented, and had the softness of a woman who had learned it in a room with a private tutor. "You must be one of the girls." Amanda inclined her head half an inch. "Ma'am." "How lovely," Ji-eun said. "How very American. The little apron, the little collar. It is charming." "Thank you, ma'am." Ji-eun took a small step closer. Her perfume was heavy and sweet and expensive. Her eyes moved over Amanda's uniform in a way that was not curiosity, it was inventory. "Tell me," Ji-eun said, "do the girls here always wear their hair down? At home our girls tie it back." "The head housekeeper permits it, ma'am." "I see." Ji-eun tilted her head. Her smile stayed exactly where it had been. "It is very pretty, all of that. Down like that, I suppose it must catch the eye." Amanda did not answer. Her training had taught her that certain sentences were not questions and were not to be answered. She kept her eyes at the level of Ji-eun's collarbone. She kept her hands at her sides. She kept her breath even. She did not blink for too long. She did not blink for too short. Ji-eun waited a moment. When no answer came, she lifted her chin the smallest fraction and turned away and walked on toward the library. Amanda felt the corridor grow cold and then warm again as her body remembered how to breathe. The elder came out next, on his cane. He paused too. His eyes went over Amanda in a different way. Not inventory. Assessment. He looked at her hands, at the crucifix chain that had slipped a millimeter above the collar of her uniform, at her mouth, at her eyes. He said something in Korean to the lawyer at his elbow. The lawyer did not translate. The elder walked on. So-yeon was last. She stopped in front of Amanda too. She did not speak. She looked at Amanda's face for 2 seconds. Then she looked down at the tray at Amanda's hip and back up at Amanda's face. And something in her mouth moved that was not quite a smile and not quite a frown. It was recognition. "Good evening, miss," So-yeon said quietly. "Good evening, ma'am." So-yeon walked on. Amanda stood in the corridor. The tray was still at her hip. The house was still around her. The chandelier down the hall in the entry threw its trembling light. She listened to the voices of the guests receding toward the library. She listened to Jaewon's voice among them, low and even, hosting. She closed her eyes for 1 second. She opened them. She turned to go back to the pantry. He was at the end of the corridor. He had come back without her hearing. He was standing just inside the small doorway of the service passage, half in shadow, his hand on the frame of the door. He had heard. She did not know how much. She knew it was enough. He did not step forward. He did not speak. He looked at her from the shadow with his face still arranged for the party and his eyes doing something else entirely. She walked toward him because that was her way home. The service passage led to the kitchen, and the kitchen led to the back stairs, and the back stairs led to her room. She did not look at him as she reached him. At the threshold, he moved. He did not touch her. He shifted his shoulder half an inch to let her pass, and as she passed, in a voice so low it barely made it through the small space between them, he said, "2 more days. Hold on, after that I will tell you who I choose." Amanda did not stop walking. She did not turn her head. She let the words fall into her like water into a cup. She walked through the passage and into the kitchen, and past the cook without a word, and up the back stairs to the 3rd floor. In her room, she closed the door and locked it, and leaned against it. She pressed her forehead to the wood. She heard herself laugh once, a small, helpless laugh. Then she covered her mouth with her hand. She sat on the edge of the bed. She untied the apron and folded it on her lap. Her hands were shaking. She did not stop them. She let them shake. She looked at her hands and let them tell her what she felt, because her mouth would not. He would tell her who he chose. She had spent 3 months believing she already knew the answer and telling herself it was not for her to want. She had spent 1 day believing the answer was going to be Ji-eun and letting the grief of that pass through her because she was a grown woman and she had known what this house was when she walked into it. She had spent an evening believing that a well-run life could survive a man's brief look through a bedroom door. Now the answer was 2 days away. She lifted her head. She looked at the photograph of her sister on the wall. She looked at the small silver crucifix on the nightstand. She looked at the empty chair by the desk. She spoke aloud, very quietly, to no one. Then, 2 more days. The house went quiet around midnight. The delegation retired. The library was closed. The chandelier in the dining room was turned off, and the great table with its 9 white settings was cleared piece by piece by the night staff. Amanda helped in silence. She carried folded linens back to the service pantry. She did not see him again that night. At 1 in the morning, she was on her knees in the small pantry off the veranda, wiping the low shelf where the wine glasses had been resting through dinner. The house was still, only the faint hum of the refrigerator 2 rooms away. She heard footsteps on the veranda outside and froze. She looked through the slit under the door. 2 pairs of shoes. Men's polished dress shoes. 2 men had stepped out onto the veranda to smoke. She recognized the elder's slow tread. She recognized the harder step of one of the lawyers. She held very still. They spoke in Korean. She could not understand. She heard her name. She heard her name twice. The first time it was said quickly, like a fact. The second time it was said slowly, like a question. The lawyer answered in a low voice. The elder made a small sound in his throat, then a long pause. Then one more sentence from the elder, short and flat, the same shape she had heard at lunch when the subject had been closed for the length of the table. Then the sound of a lighter, then smoke on the night air, then silence. Amanda stayed on her knees. She did not move for a long time. Her hand was still on the cloth on the shelf. Her heart was steady, which surprised her. She had thought it would race. It did not. She listened to the 2 men smoke in silence on the veranda above the garden. She listened to the far, small sound of a night bird in the trees. She listened to her own breath. They knew her name. The elder had been told her name. She did not know by whom. She had a guess. She thought of Jeon's smile in the corridor. She thought of the way Soyeon's eyes had moved over her hip and her hands. She thought of the elder's assessment. She thought of the small pause before the lawyer answered. She thought of Jaewon's face in the service passage. The face arranged for the party. The eyes doing something else entirely. The 3 words he had allowed himself. After that, I will tell you who I choose. Amanda finished the shelf. She stood. She rinsed the cloth in the small sink and hung it on the hook. She turned off the pantry light. She went out through the kitchen and up the back stairs and along the 3rd floor corridor to her room and closed the door and locked it. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. She did not undress. She did not sleep. Around 3 in the morning, she stood and went to her small desk. She opened the top drawer. She took out the envelope she had prepared 3 days ago, the day after the corridor and the bathrobe, when she had first understood what was coming for this house. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper. On the paper was her resignation. It was dated. It was signed. The reason for leaving was written in 1 clean line: personal circumstances. There was nothing about him on that paper. There was nothing about anyone on that paper. It was hers alone. She looked at it under the small lamp. She read her own name at the bottom in her own handwriting. She had written it slowly. She had written it in the same round, steady hand she used for the housekeeper's inventory sheets. The signature of a woman who had made her peace with leaving before anyone had asked her to go. She put the paper back in the envelope. She closed the drawer. She did not know when she would need it. She thought she might need it in 2 days. She thought she might need it in 2 hours. She was ready either way. She undressed. She put on her sleep shirt. She got into bed. She turned off the lamp. In the dark, she said her prayers. She said the short one her grandmother had taught her when she was small, the one for a heart that was frightened but not lost. She said her sister's name. She said one more name she did not usually say at night. She closed her eyes. Outside her window, over the trees, the sky was already beginning to think about morning. It was not yet gray. It was not yet blue. It was the color of a decision that had been made and was waiting for the day to catch up to it. 2 more days. She let the words go, this time, and slept. The house did not sleep the way a house sleeps. It held its breath. Amanda woke before the first bell and lay on her back for a full minute, listening to the sound of a mansion arranging itself around guests who had not asked to be pleased. She heard footsteps in the corridor below, the head butler's careful cadence. a door opening on the east wing where the elder had been placed in the largest guest suite. She heard water in a distant pipe. She heard a phone vibrate once and stop. She sat up, put her feet on the cold floor, and did what she had done every morning for 3 months. She dressed for work. The black dress, the white apron with the thin bow, the stockings, the small closed shoes, the thin gold chain with the small crucifix under the apron, where no one would see it. She tied the apron behind her back with fingers that did not tremble. She had told her hands the night before that they would not tremble today. Her hands had listened. She went down the service stairs. She took her coffee standing at the kitchen counter with the cook who did not speak. She ate a piece of dry bread because she knew she would not want to eat later. She checked her reflection in the polished side of the copper pan hanging above the stove. She saw a woman who looked calm. That would be enough. The morning schedule had shifted overnight. The head of security came through at 6:30 with the tablet and read the updates. Breakfast for the elder in his suite at 8. Formal breakfast for the 2 Miss Kangs and the lawyers in the small dining room at 9. Tour of the grounds at 10. Private meeting between the master and the elder at 11 in the library. Closed door, no service. Lunch at 1 on the terrace, weather permitting. Card game in the west salon at 3. Formal dinner at 7:30 in the main dining room. He read the assignments. Miss Stenberg on floor service. Miss Stenberg on the west corridor. Miss Stenberg on the linen room. Miss Stenberg nowhere near the dining room. Amanda nodded once and went upstairs. She spent the morning in the corridors with a cloth and a small bottle of the beeswax polish the housekeeper preferred. She wiped the banisters. She wiped the picture frames. She stayed at the far end of any hall the guests were in. She heard Gion's laugh twice from the small dining room, that same short, bright laugh from the arrival, the kind of laugh that was a punctuation mark and not a sound of joy. She heard Soyeon's voice once, low and even, asking the butler a question about the age of the house in careful English. She heard the elder's cane on the marble at 10:30 as he moved from his suite to the front door for the tour. She did not lift her eyes. At 11, the library door closed and stayed closed. Amanda was at the far end of the second-floor corridor with the cloth in her hand when it closed. She felt it more than she heard it. The house went a shade quieter. She thought about Jaewon behind that door with the old man who had raised him. She thought about the word delegation. She thought about the word choice. She wiped the same picture frame twice without noticing. The head housekeeper came up the service stairs at 11:40 and found her there. West sitting room, the housekeeper said. The elder wants tea at noon. He asked for it privately. You will bring it. You will set it down. You will leave. You will not speak unless spoken to. If he speaks to you, you will answer briefly and lower your eyes. Amanda straightened. Yes, ma'am. Miss Stenberg. The housekeeper looked at her without heat. He will look at you. That is the point of asking for you. Let him look. Do not perform. Do not shrink. Walk in as you walk. Walk out as you walk. That is all. Yes, ma'am. The housekeeper walked away. Amanda stood in the corridor, with the cloth in her hand, and understood that she had just been warned and defended in the same 3 sentences. At 11:55, she went to the kitchen and prepared the tray herself. The small, dark celadon pot, the single cup, the dish of dried persimmon, the tiny silver spoon, the folded linen. She checked the water temperature with the back of her wrist. She poured. She carried the tray down the corridor at the pace of a woman who had carried trays before. She knocked once at the west sitting room door. She waited. A voice on the other side said one word in Korean that she understood only as permission. She pushed the door open with her hip and walked in. The elder sat in the tall wingback by the window with his cane resting against his knee. He was alone. The 2 women were on the tour. The lawyers were somewhere with paper. Jaewon was still in the library. It was only the old man and the winter light on his face. Amanda crossed to the low table between the 2 chairs. She set the tray down without a sound. She lifted the pot and poured the tea into the cup at the correct angle. She set the pot back. She stepped back 1 pace. She lowered her eyes as she had been told. You are the American girl. His English was slow and clean and older than she expected. She lifted her eyes because he had spoken to her. He was looking at her with the calm curiosity of a man examining a coin he had not seen before. He was not angry. He was not warm. He was interested in the way a jeweler is interested. Yes, sir. How long? 3 months, sir. You like this house? She paused. She had been told to answer briefly. She had not been told what to say if the truth was complicated. She chose the plain version. "I like the work, sir." His mouth moved a quarter of an inch. It was not a smile. It was the acknowledgement of a decent answer. "You may go." "Yes, sir." She turned. She walked out at the same pace at which she had walked in. She closed the door behind her with the softness the house required. She went 3 steps down the corridor and put her hand flat against the wall for 1 second, and then took it away and kept walking. She had passed the first test she had not known she was taking. Lunch on the terrace was moved indoors at 12:40 because the wind picked up. Amanda was not in the dining room. She was in the linen closet at the far end of the second floor, pressing napkins with the small iron the head housekeeper trusted only to her. She could not hear voices from that distance. She was grateful. At 3, the card game began in the west salon. Dion's laugh again, twice, then a third time that was shorter and sharper. Soyeon's voice underneath it, calm, dry. The elders' silence between them. Jaewon's low answers when directly asked. Amanda passed the salon door once at 3:40 on her way to the linen closet, and heard Jaewon say something in Korean in a bright tone. She heard Jaewon answer in one word. She heard Jaewon laugh again, this time toward the elder, as if inviting him to share the joke. The elder did not laugh. Amanda kept walking. At 5, the head housekeeper found her in the second-floor corridor again. Change of assignment. Amanda's stomach dropped a full inch. She kept her face still. "Ma'am, you will serve the dinner tonight." The corridor tilted for a half-second. Amanda planted her feet in it. "Ma'am, I was told." The master changed it. "Ma'am." The head steward and 1-floor girl. That was the plan. The elder asked at 4 for a second-floor girl on the wine. He said the room was too large for one pair of hands. The master offered you. The elder agreed. "You will assist the steward with the wine service. You will not speak. You will pour from the right. You will stand at the sideboard when not pouring. You will keep your eyes down. You will do exactly what the steward tells you to do. Do you understand what I am telling you, Miss Stenberg?" Amanda understood. The elder had asked to see her a second time. Jaewon had put her in the room because refusing would have looked like hiding her. Both of them were maneuvering with her body as a piece on a board she could not see the whole of. She kept her face flat. "Yes, ma'am." 6:30 in the wine pantry. "Change your apron. The pressed one. The new stockings. Hair back in the low knot the way I showed you at Easter. Not a single loose curl at the neck. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." The housekeeper looked at her for one more second, and something in her face softened by a millimeter, and then said again, "He is trying to protect you, in his way. The elder is trying to see you, in his way. You will let both of them do what they need to do, and you will keep your head, Miss Stenberg. You have kept it for 3 months. You will keep it for 2 more days." "Yes, ma'am." The housekeeper walked away. Amanda went to her room. She closed the door. She sat on the edge of the bed for exactly 1 minute with her hands flat on her knees. She stood. She stripped the apron. She washed her face at the small basin. She combed her hair back and worked it into a low knot at the base of her neck. She pinned it. The curls fought her. She won by 2 pins. She looked at herself in the small mirror above the basin. A woman she recognized looked back. Good. She put on the pressed apron. She checked the small crucifix under it with 2 fingers. Still there. At 6:30, she was in the wine pantry. The head steward, a thin gray man of 50 who had worked in 3 embassies before this house, looked her up and down once and gave her a small, clean nod. "You will pour the water. I will pour the wine. You will refill from the right. You will not touch the elder's cup. Only I touch his. You will not touch the young master's cup. Only I touch his. You will pour for the 2 Miss Kangs and the 3 gentlemen in dark suits. Yes. Yes, sir. Do not look at any face directly. Look at the shoulder. Look at the rim, not the face. Yes, sir. Breathe." She breathed. At 7:25, they carried the trays down the corridor. At 7:29, they were in position at the sideboard behind the long table in the main dining room. At 7:30, the tall doors opened and the party came in. The elder walked first with his cane, slow, deliberate, choosing his own pace. Jiyeon walked at his right in a hanbok, the color of cream, with silver embroidery at the hem. Soyeon walked at his left in soft gray, with a single gold pin at her collar. Jaewon came behind them in a black 3-piece suit and a black tie, the collar of the white shirt crisp against the smooth line of his throat. The three lawyers filed in and took their places at the far end of the table. The head butler drew out the elder's chair. Everyone sat at once. Amanda did not look at Jae-won. She looked at the rim of the closest water glass and stepped forward with the pitcher. She poured for Ji-eun first because Ji-eun was on the elder's right. Ji-eun did not lift her eyes to Amanda's face. She lifted them to Amanda's apron. She lifted them to Amanda's throat where the small crucifix was hidden. She lifted them to Amanda's hair. She let the smile move a millimeter. "Such interesting hair," Ji-won said in soft, careful English, to no one in particular, and to everyone. "I have never seen hair like this in a dining room in Seoul." The head steward's shoulder tightened by a fraction. Amanda did not stop pouring. She finished the glass at the correct level. She stepped back one pace. She moved to So-yeon on the elder's left. So-yeon spoke without lifting her head from the menu card at her place. "It is very well kept," So-yeon said, also in English, in a voice that was not warm and was not cruel. "The uniform is correct. The line is straight. She was trained." Ji-eun's smile flickered. So-yeon had not agreed with her and had not defended anyone. She had simply set a fact on the table. Amanda poured for So-yeon and stepped back. The elder said something quietly in Korean. Jae-won answered in Korean. One sentence, short. Ji-eun laughed her laugh. The elder did not laugh. Amanda moved to the three lawyers and poured for each of them. She did not lift her eyes above the level of a lapel. She heard the elder speak again in Korean, and this time the tone was a question. She heard Jae-won answer again in Korean, longer this time. She did not know the words. She knew the temperature of them. The temperature was low. Ji-eun leaned toward the elder and said something in a bright, helpful tone in Korean, still smiling. The elder did not turn his head to her. He kept looking at Jae-won. He asked another short question. Jae-won answered with one word. The soup came. The steward moved with the tureen. Amanda stood at the sideboard with the pitcher held at the correct height. She did not move. She looked at the rim of a glass on the far end of the table. Halfway through the soup, Ji-eun spoke again in English, into the small, careful silence between spoonfuls. "The house is beautiful, Jae-won-si. The staff must work very hard. It is not easy, I think, to keep everything so uniform." A pause on the last word, a tilt of the head toward Amanda's side of the room without looking. "In our house in Seoul, we have found that certain kinds of staff do not stay long. They are not suited to the discipline. But your American house, of course, is different." Jae-won set his spoon down. He did not look at Amanda. He looked at Ji-eun with the same calm face he wore at the head of a meeting. "My staff stay as long as they wish to stay. Of course. My staff are trained by the head housekeeper who has been in this house for 22 years. Of course. My staff are not a topic of conversation at my table." The temperature at the table dropped another 2 degrees. Ji-eun's smile did not move, but the muscles around it froze in a way that made the smile look drawn on. So-yeon's mouth curved by 1/4 of an inch and flattened again. The elder set his spoon down. He looked at Jae-won for a long moment. Then he looked at Ji-eun. He said one sentence in Korean, quietly. Ji-eun bowed her head 1/2 inch. "Ne, harabeoji." He picked up his spoon again. The soup continued. Amanda did not know what he had said. She did not need to. She had watched a father, in effect, correct a girl at his own table without raising his voice by more than a breath. She had watched Ji-eun be told to be quiet. She had watched Jae-won not look at her once through any of it, and she understood exactly why. The main course came. The steward moved. Amanda refilled water. She refilled water again. She stepped back. Her arms began to ache from holding the pitcher at the correct height. She welcomed the ache. It gave her something to notice that was not the room. Between the main course and the dessert, the elder asked Jae-won a question in Korean that made Jae-won pause for 1 full second before answering. Amanda watched Jae-won's jaw work once. She watched him answer in 3 sentences, evenly, without inflection. She watched the elder listen. She watched the elder nod 1 time, small and slow, and set his hands on the table on either side of his plate. Then the elder turned his head, for the first time all evening, and looked directly at Amanda across the room. She kept her eyes on the rim of the glass in front of her. She felt his gaze the way one feels a hand pass over the back of the neck. She did not move. He looked at her for perhaps 4 seconds. Then he turned back to his son. He said one more short sentence in Korean. Jaewon's hand on the wine glass did not move. His face did not move. He said one word in return. Dessert came. Small honey cakes on white porcelain plates. Jiyeon asked Soyeon something in Korean in a light tone. Soyeon answered in one syllable. Jiyeon's smile got a little brighter and a little emptier. The lawyers ate their cakes. The elder ate half of his. He set his fork down. He said something to the butler. The butler nodded. The elder pushed back his chair. The whole table stood at once. I will retire early. Tomorrow we walk the property again. Tomorrow evening we speak of the contract. Good night. He bowed a fraction to the room. He turned. He walked out with his cane. Soyeon and Jiyeon followed after a beat. The lawyers followed after another beat. The head butler followed to escort them. Jaewon stood at the head of the table, with his hand resting flat on the wood. He did not look at Amanda. Thank you, he said to the steward. Thank you, he said, more quietly, in the direction of the sideboard, without turning his head. He walked out. Amanda stood at the sideboard with the pitcher in her hand until the steward touched her elbow. Miss Stenberg, sit down for 1 minute. You are white around the mouth. She sat down on the small stool by the sideboard. She set the pitcher on the tray. She put her hands flat on her thighs. She breathed. You did well, the steward said. You did very well. He was rude to you. You did not hear it. That is exactly what we wanted. Yes, sir. Go up now, the girls will finish. Go up the back way. Do not go through the front hall. Yes, sir. She stood. She went out through the pantry door. She crossed the service corridor. She went up the back stairs one at a time with her hand on the rail. She reached the second-floor landing. He was there. Jaewon stood at the far end of the corridor by the window with his back to her, one hand in his trouser pocket, the other resting on the sill. He had not gone up with the elder. He had come here. He had known she would come up this way. He had waited. She stopped 10 paces from him. He did not turn. Do not stand there, he said, low. Walk past me. Go to your room. If anyone comes up this stair in the next 10 minutes, I need to be seen looking out this window and not at you. She walked. She walked past him at the pace of a housemaid returning to her floor. She did not look at him. As she passed his shoulder, he spoke without moving his head. Endure 2 more days. She kept walking. 2 more days, he said, quieter. After that, I explain who I choose. To him, to them, to you, in that order. She reached the corridor to the servants' wing. She turned the corner. She stopped in the small alcove where the linen closet stood and put her forehead against the cool wood of the closet door for 2 seconds. Then she pushed off it and went to her room. She sat on the edge of the bed in the black dress and the white apron and the low knot of hair with the 2 disciplined pins in it. She did not undress. She sat there with her hands folded in her lap and thought about the elder's 4-second look and Jiyeon's careful sentence about staff who did not stay long, and Soyeon's dry, accurate correction, and the 1-syllable Jaewon had used to answer his uncle after that final short question at the end. She did not know Korean. She did not need to. She knew a man defending a position at his own table. She knew a girl being shown that her manners had failed. She knew an old patriarch measuring a room and not liking what he measured, and not deciding yet. She stood. She undressed carefully. She hung the apron. She hung the dress. She took down the 2 pins one at a time and set them on the small dish on the dresser. She let the cachos fall. She washed her face at the basin. She sat again on the edge of the bed in her nightgown. She looked at the small crucifix on its thin chain lying in the palm of her hand. 2 more days. She lay down. She did not close her eyes for a long time. She listened to the house. She heard doors close on the east wing. She heard the elder's cane once in the corridor, and then not again. She heard Jiyeon's laugh from the guest suite, thinner now, less bright. She heard the head butler climb the far stairs and turn out a light. She heard the house settle. At some point she heard, very faint, the sound of a door opening on the main floor and closing again. A step on the marble, the library door, the scrape of a chair, silence. She thought about Jaewon sitting alone in that library with a glass of whiskey he probably had not poured and the elder's questions still walking around inside his head. She thought about the one word he had used to answer the last question. She did not know what the question had been. She thought she knew the answer. She thought about her sister for the first time all day. She had not called the clinic. She had not written. She had not had a single minute in which to be a sister instead of a housemaid. She reached for her phone on the small nightstand and turned it over in her hand and did not open it. It was almost 1 in the morning. The night nurse would be on shift. Her sister would be asleep. She would call in the morning before the elder came down. She would find a service stair no one used, and she would call from the landing, and she would hear that small tired voice say her name, and she would remember what all of this was for. She set the phone back down. She lay on her side. She looked at the wall. She thought about the moment in the corridor, the pace of his voice, the word endure. He had not chosen the word softly. He had chosen it because it was the correct word. He was asking her to withstand something that was designed to break her. He was telling her that he saw the design and could not disarm it yet. He was telling her that he would. She thought about the 4 seconds the elder had looked at her. She turned them over in her mind. He had not looked at her the way Jiyeon had looked at her, which was as an offense. He had not looked at her the way Soyeon had looked at her, which was as a datum. He had looked at her the way he had looked at the marble floor of the entrance hall on his first evening. He had been measuring. He had not decided. That was more than she had expected. It was less than she needed. It would have to do. She closed her eyes. Endure 2 more days. The house held its breath around her, and she held hers with it, and the night moved slowly toward a morning she was not yet ready for, and would meet anyway. Morning came too fast. Amanda woke before the alarm. The room was still dark. She lay on her back, staring at the ceiling, and counted her breaths. 2 more days. She could survive 2 more days. She dressed in the uniform, black dress, white apron, white cuffs. She tied the apron behind her back with a small, tight bow. Her fingers did not shake. She would not let them shake. The gold crucifix rested against her skin under the fabric. She touched it once through the cotton. Then she went downstairs. The mansion was awake. Butlers moved through the halls carrying trays. The chef shouted orders in the kitchen. The head of security spoke into his earpiece near the front door. Everything looked normal. Nothing was normal. Amanda entered the breakfast room. The Kang delegation sat at the long table, the patriarch at the head, Jaeyeon on his right, Soyeon beside her, 2 lawyers at the far end, Jaewon at the opposite end, closest to the window. He looked up when she entered. His eyes held on her for half a second longer than they should have. Then he looked down at his coffee. Amanda began to pour. She served the patriarch first, then Jaeyeon, then Soyeon, then the lawyers, then Jaewon. Her hand was steady. Her breathing was slow. She kept her face empty. Jaeyeon smiled at her. The smile did not reach her eyes. Amanda, Jaeyeon said in careful English. Your apron is crooked. Amanda looked down. The apron was straight. It is straight, miss. No, here. Jaeyeon reached across the corner of the table and touched the fabric near Amanda's waist. Her fingers lingered. Amanda felt something. A small hard object pressed against the pocket lining. Jaeyeon withdrew her hand. She smiled wider. There, better. Amanda stepped back. She did not look at Jaewon. She continued around the table. The patriarch spoke in Korean. His voice was low and hard. Jaewon answered without lifting his eyes. Amanda cleared the empty pot. She walked toward the kitchen. Her legs felt heavy. In the pantry she stopped. She pressed her hand against the pocket. Something small and round and sharp. She pulled it out. A pearl earring, large, perfectly matched. Jaeyeon's earring. She stared at it in her palm. Her stomach dropped. Her mouth went dry. She knew this game. Every domestic worker in America knew this game. Object planted, object found. Job gone, reference gone, name ruined. She put the earring back in the pocket. She would not touch it again with bare fingers. She would not hide it. She would not throw it away. She would let it stay exactly where it had been planted, and she would wait. 2 more days. She went back to work. The morning moved. She served fresh coffee. She cleared plates. She refilled water. Seon watched her. Soyeon watched Jaeyeon watching her. The patriarch spoke, and Jaewon answered, and the lawyers wrote. At 10 o'clock, Jaeyeon stood up. Uncle, she said in English, loud, clear, I need to tell you something. The room went quiet. Jaewon raised his head. Jaewon turned to the patriarch. She spoke in Korean, fast, her voice climbing. She touched her ear, her empty ear. Amanda watched from the doorway with a tray in her hands. The patriarch's face darkened. He answered in Korean. His hand came down on the table. The water glasses jumped. Jaewon stood up. English, Jaewon said. His voice was flat. Jiyeon turned to him. Her eyes were bright with something that looked like tears and was not tears. My earring is missing, she said. The pair grandmother gave me. I wore both this morning. Now one is gone. I felt something when I brushed past the maid. I want the staff searched. The lawyers stopped writing. Soyeon closed her hand around her water glass. The patriarch spoke again. Short, final, in Korean. Jaewon's jaw locked. Amanda set the tray down on the sideboard. She did not run. She did not speak. She walked to the center of the room and stopped 3 steps from Jiyeon and folded her hands in front of her apron. You want to search me, Amanda said. Her voice was low and even. Search me. Jiyeon's mouth opened slightly. She had not expected the answer. The patriarch snapped in Korean. Jaewon stepped forward. Uncle, Jaewon said. This is my house, my staff. I handle this. The patriarch stared at him. Silence. Handle it then, the patriarch said in English. The words were sharp. Jaewon turned to the head butler in the doorway. He spoke 2 words in Korean. The butler nodded and left. We will do this properly, Jaewon said. In the front hall. With witnesses. And with the security team. Jaewon smiled. She thought she had won. Amanda walked past her toward the door. She did not look at Jaewon. She could not look at Jaewon. The delegation followed. The patriarch, the lawyers, Soyeon last, Jiyeon in the middle with her chin up. They gathered in the front hall under the chandelier. The head of security stood by the front door with 3 men behind him. The head butler stood by the staircase. 2 maids from the 2nd floor stood by the wall with their hands folded. Amanda stood in the center of the marble. Jaewon stopped in front of her. He did not touch her. His eyes went over her face once. She saw the muscle jump in his jaw. Amanda, he said, formal, public. Miss Kang has accused you of theft. Do you understand the accusation? I understand. Do you consent to a search of your person and your uniform? I consent. Will you empty your pockets? I will. She reached into the right pocket of the apron. She pulled out a folded handkerchief. She held it out. The head butler took it. She reached into the left pocket. Her fingers closed around the earring. She lifted it out and opened her hand flat. The pearl sat on her palm. White, round, damning. A sound went through the delegation. A small, sharp sound. Jiyeon stepped forward with her hand to her mouth. There, she said. There it is. In her pocket. She stole it. The patriarch spoke in Korean. Cold. Final. His hand made a small, dismissive gesture. Jaewon did not move. He stared at the pearl in Amanda's palm. Then he looked at Amanda's face. Amanda's face was calm. Her hand was steady. Her eyes were on his. Dismiss her, the patriarch said in English. Dismiss her now. Send her out with nothing. This is what happens when Americans work in Kang houses. Jaewon did not speak. Nephew, the patriarch said. Silence. Nephew. Jaewon turned to the head of security. Bring the tablet, he said in Korean. The head of security nodded. He stepped forward. He carried a slim black tablet. He offered it to Jaewon. Jaewon took it. He did not open it yet. He looked at the patriarch. Uncle, Jaewon said, in my house we do not dismiss a person on an accusation. We dismiss on evidence. Miss Kang has offered an accusation. The pearl in the pocket is not evidence of theft. It is evidence that a pearl was in a pocket. Anyone who has walked through this hallway in the last hour could have placed it there, including Miss Kang. Jiyeon's face changed. How dare you, she said. I dare because this is my house. The patriarch spoke sharply in Korean. Jaewon answered in Korean. Sharper. He tapped the tablet. Every room in this house has cameras, Jaewon said. He switched back to English so the entire hall could hear. Every hallway, every doorway, except the private bedrooms of the staff, out of respect. The breakfast room has 3 angles. The corridor between the breakfast room and the pantry has 2. The pantry has 1. He turned the tablet so Amanda could not see the screen. He tapped twice. He turned it toward the patriarch. The patriarch looked at the screen. His face did not change, but his eyes moved. Left, right, left again. Jaewon turned the tablet toward the lawyers. They watched. One of them wrote something down. Then Jaewon turned the tablet so the whole hall could see. The screen showed the breakfast room from above, Amanda pouring coffee, Jiun's hand reaching across the corner of the table. The angle was clear. The pearl earring was already between Jiun's fingers before her hand touched Amanda's apron. Jiun's fingers slipped the pearl into the pocket, then withdrew, then adjusted the apron edge. The whole motion took 2 seconds. The video played once. It played again, in slow motion. Jaewon had cued both angles. The hall was silent. Jiun's hand went to her throat. "That is edited," she said. "That is a fake, uncle." The patriarch did not answer. Soyeon spoke for the first time all morning. Quiet Korean, 2 sentences. Her eyes were on Jiun. The patriarch closed his eyes for one long breath, then he opened them. He looked at Jiun. "You dishonored the house of Kang in a foreign hall," he said. In English, "You will not speak again in this room." Jiun's mouth opened. Jiun's mouth closed. Jaewon took the pearl from Amanda's palm. His fingers did not touch her skin. He was careful. He turned and placed the pearl on the small silver tray held by the head butler. "Return this to Miss Kang's room," Jaewon said. "Pack her belongings. She departs by noon." The head butler bowed. Jiwon made a small sound. No one looked at her. The patriarch turned to Amanda. He studied her. Her face, her uniform, her hands folded in front of her apron. His eyes were not kind. They were not cruel. They were tired. "Girl," the patriarch said, "why do you work here?" Amanda lifted her chin. "Sir," she said, "may I answer honestly?" "Answer." "I work here because your nephew pays me more than any other house in this city. I work here because I need every dollar I earn. I work here because I have a reason." "What reason?" Amanda hesitated. Jaewon spoke. "Uncle, you do not have to ask her that. I ask her that." Amanda looked at Jaewon, then at the patriarch. She reached behind her back. She untied the apron. She lifted it over her head. She folded it once and laid it across her left forearm. The black dress underneath was plain and honest. She reached into a small inner pocket sewn into the apron's waistband. She pulled out a photograph, small, worn at the corners. She held it out. The head butler took it. He carried it to the patriarch on the silver tray. The patriarch looked at the photograph. A young woman lay in a hospital bed, thin, tubes in her arm. Her hair was the same texture as Amanda's, cut short. She was smiling for the camera with all the strength she had. She could not have been more than 19. "My sister," Amanda said. "She was born with a heart condition that requires a device to keep her alive. That device costs $140,000. The surgery to install it costs another $80,000. My insurance covers none of it. My mother works 2 jobs. My father is dead. I work here." The hall was silent. The patriarch looked at the photograph a long time. "How much have you saved?" he asked. "Sir?" "How much?" $92,000, sir, in 3 months. The patriarch's eyebrows lifted a fraction. He looked at Jaewon. "You pay her that much?" "I pay her what she is worth." "Nephew." "Uncle." The patriarch handed the photograph back to the butler. The butler carried it back to Amanda. She took it and slid it into the apron and put the apron over her arm again. The patriarch turned to Jaewon. "The delegation," the patriarch said. "The candidates. The purpose of this visit." Jaewon stepped forward. He stopped 2 steps from the patriarch. He turned to face Amanda. He held out his hand. Amanda looked at his hand. She did not move. "Miss Stenberg," Jaewon said. His voice was low, but the hall carried it. "Please." Amanda looked at his face. His face was not the face he wore at the breakfast table. It was the face she had seen for 1 second in the hallway 3 days ago when he had said, "I cannot pretend anymore." She lifted her hand. She placed it in his. His fingers closed around hers. Warm, steady. He turned to the patriarch. He did not release her hand. "Uncle," Jaewon said, in English, so every witness in the hall would understand. "This is Amanda Stenberg. This is the woman I have chosen to walk with." The lawyers stopped writing. Soyeon lowered her eyes. Jaewon made a small strangled sound. The patriarch stared at their joined hands. Then he stared at Jaewon's face. Then he stared at Amanda's face. Amanda did not lower her eyes. She did not lift her chin in defiance. She stood exactly as she was, a woman in a black dress with a folded apron on her arm, and her hand in the hand of the man who had just claimed her in front of his family. The patriarch spoke in Korean, 4 words. Slow. Jae-won answered in Korean. 2 words. Immediate. The patriarch looked away first. We will speak in the library, the patriarch said. In English. Nephew. Alone. In 1 hour. Yes, uncle. The patriarch turned. He walked toward the guest wing. He walked slowly. He used the cane. So-yeon followed him. The lawyers followed her. Ji-eun stood alone in the center of the marble for 3 seconds. Then she turned and walked after them without looking at anyone. The maids by the wall exhaled at the same time. The head of security dismissed his men with a hand gesture. They filed out the front door. The head butler bowed to Jae-won and Amanda and withdrew. The hall emptied. Jae-won still held her hand. She looked down at their fingers. Sir, she said quietly. Do not call me sir. I do not know what to call you. He did not answer. He lifted her hand. He looked at her palm. There was a small red mark where the pearl had pressed into her skin. He closed his other hand over the mark. Gentle. I am sorry, he said. For what? For letting her put it there. I saw it happen at the breakfast table. I did not stop it. I wanted them to show themselves in front of witnesses. I used you to do it. I am sorry. Amanda looked at him a long time. You warned me, she said. In the corridor, endure 2 more days. You knew she would try something. I knew. You let her try. I let her try because I needed the delegation to see her fail. Amanda's mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Not quite anything. You are a dangerous man, sir. I told you not to call me sir. I do not know your first name in the way that would let me use it. Jae-won. Jae-won. He closed his eyes for 1 second when she said it. Then he opened them. I have to go to the library, he said. My uncle will offer me the inheritance if I dismiss you. He will offer me the family seat. He will offer me the sole operations. He will offer me my grandfather's ring. What will you say? I will say no. Do not say no. He blinked. Do not say no yet, Amanda said. Not because of me. Say what you would have said if I were not here. Choose the family or choose the seat because it is right for you, not because you held my hand in front of them. He looked at her a long time. You are asking me to choose you and not use you as the reason. Yes. That is a very expensive request, Miss Stenberg. I know. He lifted her hand once more. He pressed it briefly against his forehead, a gesture she did not have a word for, something older than English. Then he released her hand and stepped back. Go to the kitchen, he said. Sit down. Drink water. Do not serve lunch. Do not clean anything. Wait for me. Yes. He turned and walked toward the library. Amanda stood in the empty hall. The chandelier hummed above her. The marble was cold under her shoes. She looked at her palm. The red mark from the pearl was fading. She walked to the kitchen. The chef looked up. He did not speak. He poured her a glass of water. He set it in front of her at the small staff table. She sat down. She drank half of it in 1 swallow. Her hand began to shake. She set the glass down carefully so it would not spill. She wrapped both her hands around it. She waited for the shaking to stop. It did not stop for a long time. In the library, the patriarch sat in a leather chair by the window. Jae-won stood across from him. Neither man sat close to the other. The lawyers were not in the room. So-yeon was not in the room. Ji-eun was upstairs being packed. The patriarch spoke first, in Korean. His voice was tired. The girl is beautiful. I saw why you chose her. I am 72, not blind. Uncle, let me finish. The girl is beautiful, and she carries herself like a queen, even in an apron. The photograph is not a lie. I saw the veins in the child's arm. Your grandfather would have paid for that surgery in cash the day he heard about it. He would also have paid the girl to leave you afterward and never come back. I am not my grandfather. You are the head of the family. I am not the head yet. You will be, in 2 years, in 1 year, when I die. Uncle. Listen to me. The patriarch lifted the cane and tapped it once against the floor. The choice is not the girl or the family. The choice is the girl or the seat. If you take the girl and refuse the seat, we will find another Kang to lead. There are cousins. There are always cousins. If you take the seat and the seat becomes soft, every enemy in soul will use her as a knife against you, against the child you will have with her, against the surgery you paid for, against everything. Jaewon did not answer. I offer you a third door, the patriarch said. Take the girl, refuse the seat, keep the American operations, keep your money, keep your house, live your life. Let the family go to your cousin. It is not weakness, it is a boundary. Your grandfather did the same when he was 38. Jaewon looked out the window. My grandfather refused the seat because he was in love? He refused the seat because he wanted to live. Yes. You never told me that. You never asked. Jaewon turned. He looked at his uncle. I want time to answer, he said. Give me 1 month. 1 week. 1 month. The patriarch tapped the cane again. Then he nodded once. 1 month. From today. If I die before then, the answer is due at the funeral. Yes, uncle. Send the girl to me before we depart. I want to say one thing to her, in private, in this room. Uncle, I will not insult her. I will not offer her money. You have my word. Jaewon hesitated. Then he bowed his head 1 degree. Yes, uncle. He left the library. Amanda was still in the kitchen with her hands around the water glass. Jaewon stopped in the doorway. She looked up. He wants to speak with you. Jaewon said. In the library, alone. He gives his word, he will not insult you. Amanda stood up. She smoothed the black dress. She lifted the apron from the back of the chair. She began to tie it around her waist. Do not wear the apron, Jaewon said. She stopped. Go as a person, he said, not as staff. She set the apron down on the chair. She smoothed the dress again. She lifted her chin. I will go. She walked past him toward the library. She did not touch him. He did not touch her. But as she passed him, he said her name very low. Amanda. She stopped without turning. Whatever he offers you, whatever he says, answer as yourself. Do not answer as what you think I want. Yes. She kept walking. In the library, the patriarch was standing at the window, looking out at the winter garden. He did not turn when she entered. She stopped 3 steps behind him. She waited. Sit down, Miss Stenberg. She sat in the leather chair he indicated. She folded her hands in her lap. She kept her back straight. He turned. He walked to the chair across from her. He sat slowly. He rested both hands on the cane between his knees. I will not offer you money, he said. My nephew told you I would. I gave him my word I would not. Thank you, sir. I will offer you information, and then a question. Yes, sir. The information first. My nephew is the head of an organization that has enemies in 3 countries. 2 of them do not care about American law. If you stay with him, your sister's hospital will be watched. Your mother's home will be watched. Every phone call you make will be watched. This is not a threat. This is a description of the life he leads. I understand. The question. She waited. If I offered you the surgery for your sister today, in cash, wired to the hospital before sundown, on the condition that you leave this house tonight and never contact my nephew again, would you accept? Amanda did not answer immediately. She thought. She thought about her sister in the hospital bed. She thought about her mother's back bent over the second job. She thought about the $92,000 she had saved and the $128,000 still to go. She thought about the way Jaewon had said her name in the kitchen doorway. She thought about the pearl in the pocket. She thought about the video he had cued in 2 angles because he had already been watching, had already been protecting her, had already chosen her before this morning even began. Sir, she said. Yes. 2 months ago, I would have accepted. I would have taken the money and I would have left this house, and I would have paid for my sister's surgery, and I would have never looked back. 2 months ago, I did not know your nephew's first name. And now? Now I know his first name, and I know what he looked like this morning when he chose to hold my hand in front of you instead of letting me be dismissed. And I know what he looked like 3 days ago in the corridor when he said he could not pretend anymore. And I know what he did not do for 3 months when he had every chance to do it and did not. So I cannot accept your offer, sir. Not because of what he would think of me, because of what I would think of me. The patriarch's face did not move, but his eyes changed. Something in them softened, not warmth, something older, recognition. You would refuse the money. I would refuse the money, and I would find another way for my sister. Sir, I have been finding ways my whole life. He watched her a long time. Then he lifted the cane and tapped it once against the floor. Go, he said. Send my nephew back. She stood up. She bowed her head 1 degree the way she had seen the butlers do it. She turned to leave. At the door, his voice stopped her. Miss Stenberg. She turned. My grandmother was a servant in a Japanese house during the occupation. She married my grandfather when he was 22, and she was 20. Her family disowned her. His family disowned him. They died together at 81 in a small apartment in Busan with 16 grandchildren. This is not a promise. This is a fact of the Kang family history that no one speaks of anymore. She did not know what to say. Go, he said again. Send him. She went. Jaewon was waiting at the end of the hall. She stopped in front of him. She did not speak. He did not speak. He looked at her face and read what he needed to read. He walked past her toward the library. She stood in the hall until the library door closed behind him. Then she walked slowly back toward the kitchen with her hands very steady at her sides and her breathing very slow and even, and the gold crucifix warm against her skin under the black dress. The clock in the hall struck 11. The delegation would depart in the morning. She had 1 more night to survive in this house as staff. 1 more night before whatever came next came next. She did not know what she wanted next. She only knew what she had refused, and the shape of the refusal was the shape of a door she had just walked through and could not walk back through. Whatever waited on the other side would find her when it was ready. She reached the kitchen. The chef had left a plate of food on the staff table. Rice, a small piece of grilled fish, kimchi in a bowl. He had known she would not eat lunch with the family. She sat down. She lifted the chopsticks. Her hand was steady now. She ate. The rice was warm. The soup was warm. Amanda ate slowly, the way a woman eats when she is teaching her body that it is safe again. Jaewon did not speak. He watched her the way a man watches something he almost lost and cannot afford to lose twice. The butler moved without sound. The night settled over the mansion in soft gray layers, and for the first time in 92 days the house felt like it belonged to the two of them. When she finished, she set the chopsticks down parallel across the bowl. I am going to sleep in my own room tonight, she said. He nodded once. He did not argue. He did not press. He understood the shape of the request. She was not refusing him. She was refusing the story. The delegation was still under his roof. Ji-yoon was still packing her cases upstairs with hands that shook from humiliation. The uncle was still sitting in the east wing, with a jade cane across his knees and a granite face. Until those bodies were gone from the property, Amanda would not walk into Jaewon's bedroom. Not because she doubted him, because she respected herself. I will walk you up, he said. No. Her voice was gentle. You stay. Finish what you started with him. She stood. She touched his shoulder once as she passed. It was the first time she had ever touched him without permission. His hand came up and covered hers before she could pull away. He held it there for 2 seconds. Neither of them looked at the other. Then she was gone, and the corridor swallowed the sound of her slippers. Jaewon stayed at the table for a long time. He did not eat. He looked at the empty chair across from him and imagined it filled every night for the rest of his life. Upstairs, in the servant wing, Amanda closed her door and leaned her back against it. The narrow bed, the single window, the chair with the folded uniform on it. Everything she had come with fit into one suitcase under that bed. She let herself slide down the door until she was sitting on the floor. She did not cry. She had passed the hour for crying. She pressed her palms flat against the wood and breathed until her chest stopped shaking. Then she got up. She washed her face. She braided her hair loose over one shoulder. She lay down in the narrow bed in the servant wing of the house of the man who had just claimed her in front of his blood, and she slept with the door unlocked. Morning came gray and clean. Rain had passed in the night. The gardens smelled of wet stone and cut grass. Amanda was awake at 5. She dressed. Not the uniform. She had folded the uniform on the chair and left it there. She wore a simple gray knit dress that reached her knees and flat brown shoes. She braided her hair back. She went down the service stairs because habit is stronger than status, and she found the butler already in the kitchen with coffee waiting. Miss Stenberg? He inclined his head. He did not say Amanda. He did not say Miss Amanda. He said her full name the way one addresses a woman of the house. The delegation departs at 11. Mr. Kang requests that you take breakfast in the small dining room with him. Thank you. She took the coffee. I will be there. The small dining room was warm with morning light. Jaewon was already seated when she came in. He was in a charcoal suit, no tie, collar open, 2 buttons. The dragon on his neck showed dark against the white of his shirt. He stood when she entered. He held the chair. She sat. Did you sleep? Some. She stirred the coffee. You? No. She almost smiled. She looked at him over the rim of the cup. Then eat. He ate because she told him to. It amused her privately that a man who commanded 3 cities ate toast because a woman in a gray knit dress told him to. She watched him and thought, this is what the rest of it looks like. Not the confession, not the corridor, not the library. This. Toast. Coffee. A gray morning after the storm. At 10:50, cars pulled up on the gravel drive. Black sedans. 3 of them. The delegation loaded in silence. The uncle came down the front steps with his cane. He did not look for Amanda. He did not look for Jaewon. He stopped at the base of the stairs and turned. Jaewon was there. Amanda stood 2 paces behind him, hands folded at her waist. The uncle looked at her. It was a long look, and it was not warm, but it was not cruel. It was the look of a man who has been forced to reconsider a lifetime of rules in the span of one night and has enough dignity to admit that he might be reconsidering. He said something in Korean, short, 2 sentences. Jaewon answered, 1 sentence. The uncle turned to Amanda and said in careful English, you are a serious woman. Thank you, sir. That was not a compliment, it was a fact. He tapped the cane once against the stone. Serious women make serious wives. Serious wives make sons who remember their grandfathers. Do not forget your grandfather when the time comes. I have not forgotten mine yet, sir. Something passed behind his eyes. It was not approval. It was recognition. He inclined his head half an inch. He got in the car, the door closed. Jiun did not come out to say goodbye. She was already in the second sedan behind tinted glass, her face turned to the far window. Amanda watched the cars pull down the drive and disappear between the cypress trees, and she did not feel triumph. She felt tired. Jaewon reached for her hand. She let him take it. They stood on the front steps of the mansion, alone, the gravel still wet, and he lifted her hand and pressed his mouth to the back of her fingers. Not a kiss, a vow. Come with me, he said. Where? To your country. She turned her head slowly. What? Your sister. He kept her hand against his mouth so she could feel him speaking against her skin. You have not been home in 3 months. I have a jet. It leaves at 3. We will be in Atlanta by morning. I will not go inside with you. I will wait wherever you tell me to wait. But you are going home today. She did not answer for a full breath. Then she said, I need to pack. Go. She went. She packed the 1 suitcase. The uniform stayed folded on the chair. The gold crucifix went around her neck under the gray dress. She was ready in 20 minutes. The jet was small, white leather, 2 seats facing 2 seats. She sat across from him and looked out the window as the runway fell away beneath them. She had never been on a private plane. She had flown twice in her life, both times in the last row by the bathroom. She did not say any of this. He did not need to be told. He watched her watch the clouds and he kept his hands folded on the table between them, because he understood that she was not his yet. She was on loan to him for the length of this trip, and he was not going to squander a minute of it. They landed at a small field outside Atlanta at 4 in the morning local time. A black car was waiting. She gave the driver an address in a neighborhood he clearly did not know. Jaewon did not ask about it. He looked out the window at the strip malls and the pawn shops and the churches with hand-painted signs, and he understood a piece of Amanda that no ledger could have told him. The house was small, yellow siding, a porch that leaned, a screen door that hung crooked. Her mother was already awake. The kitchen light was on at 4:30 in the morning, because her mother had not slept a full night in 8 months. Amanda got out of the car. She looked back at Jaewon through the open door. Wait here. Yes. However long it takes. Yes. She closed the door softly. She walked up the cracked path. She knocked once, and then she opened the door, because in that house, you did not wait to be let in. Her mother stood up from the kitchen table so fast the chair fell backward. They held each other in the doorway for a long minute without either of them saying a word. Then her mother stepped back and looked at her, really looked. She saw the gray dress. She saw the small gold chain. She saw the woman who had walked in and understood, with the sharp instinct of mothers, that something had changed permanently. Where is she? Sleeping? Bad night. Her mother wiped her hands on her apron. The new doctor came Tuesday. New doctor? From the specialist clinic in Emory, they called. They said her case was picked up by a research program. They are covering everything, Amanda. Everything. The transplant workup, the flights to Boston for the panel, the medication, everything. Amanda went very still. Since when? 6 weeks. I tried to tell you, but you said you could not talk on the servant phone. I sent a letter. Did you get it? No. Her mother wiped her hands on the apron again, a gesture of a woman who had done a lifetime of dishes. The Lord provides, baby. He provides in ways we do not see. Amanda sat down at the kitchen table. She placed both hands flat on the vinyl tablecloth. She looked at the cheap floral pattern, and she added up the timeline in her head. 6 weeks. 6 weeks put the intake right after the first month she had walked into that mansion. Right after Jaewon had asked her, casually, over the accounts, what her family situation was. She had said one sentence. My little sister has a kidney condition, and the American system does not want to pay for it. She had said it once. She had never brought it up again. She had been too proud. The Lord provides, her mother had said, in ways we do not see. Amanda closed her eyes. Mama. What, baby? I need to sit with her when she wakes up. Then I need to go back outside for a minute. Can you make coffee? There is coffee. Make more. She went into the small back bedroom where her sister slept. 19 years old. Thin as paper. Cheekbones sharp under skin that used to be full. Her sister's hand was outside the blanket, curled loose on the pillow. Amanda took the hand. She held it in both of hers. Her sister's eyes opened slowly, unfocused, and then focused, and then filled. You came. I came. Mama said the fancy doctors are coming next week to fly me to Boston. Mama said an angel is paying. Amanda's throat closed. She swallowed twice. Yeah, baby. An angel is paying. She stayed for an hour. She braided her sister's hair. She rubbed lotion into her hands. She told her about the mansion in ways that would make a sick 19-year-old laugh. She told her about the marble floors and the way the butler pretended not to notice when she stole an extra biscuit. She did not tell her about Jaewon. Not yet. That was a conversation for a body that had more strength. When her sister slept again, Amanda kissed her forehead. She walked out through the kitchen. Her mother watched her go with the eyes of a woman who was pretending not to know. Amanda opened the passenger door of the black car. Jaewon looked up from his phone. Whatever he saw in her face made him put the phone down very slowly. Get out. He got out. She walked around to the sidewalk in front of the leaning porch, in the gray light of a Georgia dawn, with the sound of a rooster somewhere 3 streets over. She stood in front of him. She looked up. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. You did it. He did not answer. He did not insult her by lying. He did not humiliate her by claiming credit either. He stood there with his hands at his sides and let her decide what to do with the truth. 6 weeks. Her voice broke and reformed. You paid 6 weeks ago. You did not tell me. You never planned to tell me. No. Why? Because it was not a bargain. He said it flat and simple. If I told you, it would have become a debt. It was not a debt. It was mine to do. You had nothing to do with it. I had everything to do with it. You had nothing to owe me. She hit him. Not hard. Once flat palm against his chest, the way a woman hits when she has run out of any other language. He did not move. He did not catch her hand. He let her hit him because he understood what the hit was. She hit him a second time, and then she was crying against the lapel of his suit, and his arms came around her carefully, and he held her while she cried into his chest, in front of a leaning porch on a street where nobody had ever seen a car like that. When she was done, she stepped back. She wiped her face with the flat of her hand. She looked at the wet mark on his suit, and, absurdly, she laughed once. I ruined your jacket. I have others. Of course you do. He took a handkerchief from his pocket and gave it to her. She used it. She folded it. She put it in her own pocket. Come inside, she said. Meet my mother. He blinked. It was the first time she had ever seen him surprised. Are you certain? I am certain. She led him up the cracked path. She opened the screen door. She said, Mama, this is Kang Jae-won. He is the man I work for. He is also the man who paid for the doctors. She paused. He is also the reason I did not come home this month. Her mother looked at him for a long time. She looked at the suit. She looked at the dragon on his neck. She looked at his eyes. She looked at the way he stood behind her daughter. One step behind, not one step in front. Then she said, Sit down, son. I made coffee. He sat. He drank the coffee. He answered every question her mother asked, and her mother asked many, and none of them were about money. They were about whether he went to church, and what he did on Sundays, and whether his mother was still living, and whether he understood that Amanda's grandmother had raised her to be a woman who did not bend for any man. He answered every question truthfully. He did not perform. He did not charm. He sat at the vinyl table with the floral tablecloth, and he told a black woman from South Atlanta the truth about who he was and what he did for a living, and he did not decorate any of it. When he was done, her mother nodded slowly. She stood up. She refilled his cup without asking. You have work to do on your soul, son. Yes, ma'am. Amanda will not fix that for you. No, ma'am. But if she chooses to walk beside you while you fix it yourself, you will not waste her time. No, ma'am. Then finish your coffee. They stayed 3 days. On the second day, the sister was strong enough to sit up in the porch chair, and Amanda introduced her to Jae-won, and the sister looked at him with the pure, clean gaze of a 19-year-old who had spent a year expecting to die, and she said, You are the angel. He said, I am not an angel. She said, You are to me. He did not answer. He looked at the porch boards. Amanda watched him and understood that she was looking at a moment she would remember for the rest of her life. She sat down on the porch step beside him and she put her hand on the back of his neck, right over the dragon, and she did not take it away for a long time. On the third night, sitting on that porch after her mother and sister had gone to sleep, he said the thing he had come to say. I am not going to ask you to marry me tonight. Good. I am going to ask you for a year. She turned her head. A year, he said. Come live in the house as my woman. Not the staff. Not the fiancé. My woman. Your own room if you want it. Your own bank account. Your own car. Your family flown to you whenever you want. For 1 year. If at the end of that year you are not certain, you walk out the front door with everything I have set aside for you, and I do not follow. If at the end of that year you are certain, then I put a ring on your finger in front of my uncle, and in front of your mother, and in front of God, and I do not take it off you until one of us is in the ground. The porch was quiet. A dog barked 2 houses down. Why a year? Because you deserve to choose me on a day that is not the day I saved your sister. You deserve to choose me on a Tuesday when nothing is happening. That is what a year gives you. Tuesdays. She looked at him. Kang Jae-won. Yes. You are smarter than you look. I look very smart. She laughed. She had not laughed like that in 100 days. She laughed, and she leaned her head against his shoulder, and she watched the moths circle the porch light, and she said, All right. A year. They went back on the 4th morning. The mansion looked different when she walked into it in a gray knit dress with her hand in his instead of a black uniform with a tray. The staff had been prepared. The east wing had been remade for her. Her own sitting room, her own dressing room, her own bath, a door that connected to his rooms and a lock on her side of it, which she noticed and which he did not mention. The butler bowed when she came in and said, Welcome home, Miss Stenberg. She did not correct him. She had earned the name. The year passed the way a good year passes, in ordinary days that do not photograph well. She learned Korean, slowly, with a private tutor who did not condescend. She read the ledgers with him at night, because he had promised her that nothing in the business would ever be hidden from her, and she had promised him that she would ask hard questions. She flew her sister to Boston twice. She flew her mother to the mansion 3 times. She learned which of the staff to trust and which to move to other properties. She wore the small gold crucifix every day, and she did not wear the uniform once. On a Tuesday in April, 12 months and 1 day after the porch, she was on her knees in the garden planting rosemary along the low stone wall because the head gardener had finally agreed to let her have a corner of her own. Her hands were in the dirt. Her hair was up in a scarf. She was in old jeans and one of his white shirts with the sleeves rolled to the elbow. He walked out onto the flagstones. She did not look up. "You are getting mud on my shirt," he said. "It is my shirt now." He crouched down beside her. He took a small black box from his jacket pocket. He set it on the flat top of the stone wall between the rosemary and the lavender. He did not open it. He did not speak. She looked at the box. She looked at him. She sat back on her heels. She wiped her hands on the thighs of her jeans, slow, careful, giving herself the time she needed. She reached for the box. She did not open it either. She held it in her muddy hand. Kang Jae-won. "Yes, I chose you that night. I know. I was only waiting for you to choose me twice. I choose you twice." His voice was low and rough. "I choose you 100 times. I choose you every morning for the rest of my life." She opened the box. The ring was old. It was not a diamond. It was a small, dark red stone in an antique gold setting, the kind of ring a grandmother passes down. She looked at him with the question in her eyes. "My mother's," he said. "The only thing of hers I have. I want it on your hand." She let him put it on. Her hand was still muddy. He did not care. He slid the ring on over the dirt, and he lifted her hand, and he pressed his mouth to the ring, and then he pressed his mouth to hers, and it was the first real kiss they had ever had, and it was slow, and it was long, and it was clean. When they parted, she was smiling and crying at the same time. He rested his forehead against hers. "Say it," he said. "Yes." Again. "Yes, Kang Jae-won, yes." The Kang family flew in the following month. The uncle came off the plane leaning on his cane, and he walked straight to Amanda in the receiving hall, and he stopped in front of her, and he inclined his head 1 full inch, which was a bow deeper than he had given any woman in 40 years. He said, in careful English, "The Kang family recognizes you as the wife of my nephew. You will carry our name with honor." Amanda said, "I will carry it with my own honor also, sir." He smiled for the first time she had ever seen. It was a thin smile, but it was real. "That," he said, "is exactly why." The wedding was quiet, small. Her mother in the front pew, her sister as maid of honor, strong now, color in her cheeks. The uncle stood as witness. The butler cried and pretended he was not crying. She wore ivory. She wore the dark red ring under the wedding band. She walked down the aisle on her own arm because her father was long dead and she had walked herself through everything else. That night, after the guests were gone, after the mansion was quiet, the butler came to Jae-won in the study. He closed the door behind him. He stood at attention. "Sir, a word. Speak." "Ji-eun." The butler did not sit. "She has been seen in Seoul 3 times this month, meeting with a man." "Which man?" The butler hesitated 1 second. It was the only hesitation Jae-won had ever heard from him. "The brother, sir. The one nobody knew you had." The room went very still. Jae-won set down the glass in his hand. He did not react beyond that. Amanda was in the doorway. She had come to find him. She had heard the last sentence. She walked in. She closed the door behind her. She stood beside her husband, and she put her hand flat on the small of his back, the way a wife stands with a husband when the world is about to shift again. Jae-won. Amanda. She looked at the butler. She looked at her husband. She looked at the ring on her finger, and at the crucifix at her throat, and at the year of Tuesdays she had earned with her own 2 hands. She smiled. It was a small smile. It was a serious smile. It was the smile of a woman who was not afraid. "Then tomorrow," she said, "we start with him." The butler bowed. He left the room. The door closed softly behind him. Jae-won turned to her, and he lifted her hand, and he pressed his mouth to the ring 1 more time. Outside the window, over the black gardens, the first stars were coming out. The house was theirs. The war was theirs. And whatever came next, it would come to a wife who had already chosen twice, and to a husband who would choose her every morning for the rest of his life. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever loved someone in silence for 3 months, counting every look, afraid that one word would break everything? Have you ever stood in a room full of powerful people who wanted you gone, and chosen to keep your dignity instead of your job? Have you ever been chosen twice by the same person, and understood only the second time that the first time was already enough? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about silent love, chosen dignity, and second chances, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.